I heard my wife gave my black card details to her sister thinking I was asleep. Take it all over $170,000. I just smiled. 50 minutes later, her phone buzzed. He knows everything. Something's happening. Then it went completely silent. The apartment was too quiet for 2 a.m. I lay there in our king-sized bed, the sheets cool against my skin, listening to the rhythm of my own breathing. Sarah thought I was asleep. She always thought I was asleep by midnight, a convenient assumption she had been making for the past 3 months. Ever since her sister Melissa moved back to the city, the kind of assumption that makes people careless. The floorboards in the hallway creaked. Not the settling house kind of creak, but the deliberate weight shift of someone trying to be quiet. I'd learned to distinguish between the two during my years in corporate intelligence back before I made my first fortune in software security. Ironic, really. I'd built an empire teaching companies how to protect their secrets, and here I was, lying in the dark, about to discover my wife's. Through my barely open eyelids, I watched her silhouette move past the bedroom doorway. She was heading to the living room. Our living room, with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, the custom Italian furniture, the art pieces we'd collected together during trips to Paris and Tokyo. Or rather, trips I'd paid for while she collected. I'd been noticing things, small things at first. The way she'd angle her phone away when I entered a room, the frequency of Melissa's visits, the shopping bags that appeared with increasing regularity, always with some explanation about sales or necessities. But it was the credit card statement from last month that had made me start paying real attention. $47,000 in charges I didn't recognize, spread across stores I'd never heard Sarah mention. When I'd asked about it, she'd smiled. That smile I used to love. The one that crinkled the corners of her eyes and said, "Just some things for the house, honey. You know how expensive good taste is." Then she'd kissed my cheek and changed the subject to her mother's upcoming birthday. I should have pressed. I didn't. The sound of her voice drifted down the hallway now, low and conspiratorial. She was on the phone at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. I slid out of bed with a practiced silence of someone who'd spent the last week preparing for this moment. The floor was cold under my bare feet as I moved to the doorway, staying in the shadows. My heart was beating faster than I wanted to admit. That sick feeling of anticipation mixing with something darker. The kind of vindication you don't want to feel about someone you've promised to love forever. I'm telling you, Mel, he has no idea. Sarah's voice was clearer now, more confident. He works 16-hour days, comes home exhausted, and trusts me completely. It's almost too easy. I pressed my back against the wall, the cool paint grounding me in the moment. This was real. This was happening. The black card, a pause in his wallet where it always is. He keeps it in his office desk drawer during the day, bedside table at night. Creatures of habit, you know. Another pause. I could imagine Melissa on the other end, probably in that expensive apartment she'd suddenly been able to afford 3 months ago. The apartment I'd assumed she was renting with help from her new job. "Look," Sarah continued, her voice taking on an edge of excitement that made my stomach turn. "He's got 17 accounts. 17! The man has more money than God, and he barely pays attention to any of them. Last month's charges, he asked one question and dropped it. One question." I heard her laugh, a sound I'd once recorded on my phone because it made me happy. Now it felt like glass in my ears. The limit is ridiculous, like obscene. I checked the statements he leaves lying around in his office. We could take $170,000 easy, maybe more. He wouldn't even notice for weeks. And by then, she trailed off, and I could almost see her shrugging. By then, what's he going to do? We're married. It's community property anyway, right? The legal inaccuracy would have been amusing if my entire world wasn't quietly imploding. No, he's definitely asleep. I gave him that herbal tea he likes an hour ago. He's out cold. Another pause. Because I know his patterns, Mel. Wednesday morning, he has that standing meeting with the board. He'll be up at 5:30, shower gone by 6:15. Like clockwork. We have time. I checked my watch. 2:47 a.m. That gave me just under 3 hours. Okay, I'm going to get it now. Stay on the line. Sarah's footsteps moved toward the bedroom, and I had perhaps 15 seconds to get back into position. I crossed the room in 4 long strides, slipped under the covers, and arranged myself in the same position I'd been in when she left. Face turned away from the door, breathing steady and deep. The bedroom door opened wider. I felt her presence, heard the soft catch of her breath as she watched me, making sure. Then the scrape of the drawer opening on my bedside table, the quiet rustle of my wallet being lifted, the click of the drawer closing. She stood there for another moment. In another life, in another version of this story, she might have felt guilty. She might have hesitated. She might have put the card back, climbed into bed, and held me, realizing what she was about to lose. Instead, she whispered like taking candy from a baby. The door closed. Her footsteps retreated. I opened my eyes and stared at the ceiling where the city lights created shifting patterns through the windows. Somewhere in my chest, something that used to be soft had turned to steel. I'd built my career on patterns, on understanding systems, on knowing that every network has vulnerabilities. I just never thought about applying that expertise to my own life. But here we were. I picked up my phone from where I'd hidden it under my pillow, already recording everything. The audio was crystal clear. I'd installed enhanced microphones throughout the apartment last week after I'd found the first piece of evidence. A receipt crumpled in Sarah's car from a jewelry store I'd never been to for $8,400. When I'd tracked down the purchase, I'd found she'd bought a Cartier watch for Melissa. Got it. Sarah's voice came through. Tenny now through the phone speaker, reading the numbers now. Ready? I opened my laptop, the one I'd brought to bed just in case of emergencies, a habit Sarah had stopped questioning months ago, and pulled up the real-time monitoring system I'd set up on all my accounts. Every card had embedded tracking. Every transaction pinged my secure server. Every dollar had a digital shadow that followed it through the banking system like a bloodhound. Sarah read out the numbers. All 16 digits of the black card, the one with the $500,000 monthly limit that I kept for business expenses and emergencies, the one she was about to turn into evidence. The CVV? Melissa's voice was faint but audible through Sarah's phone. What's the CVV? Hold on, it's on the back. 847 and it expires. 7/27. I watched my screen as the first transaction pinged. An online transfer, $50,000 to Melissa's account. Then another $60,000 to an account I didn't recognize, probably one Sarah had opened secretly. Then another $170,000 in 14 minutes. I smiled in the darkness. Not from happiness, not from satisfaction, but from the cold, clear certainty of someone who just watched his contingency plan activate perfectly. Holy, it worked. Melissa's voice louder now, almost giddy. Sarah, this is actually working. I told you. Sarah sounded breathless, excited. I told you he was too distracted to notice, too trusting. God, Mel, do you know how easy this has been? How stupid. What are you going to tell him when he finds out? If he finds out, Sarah corrected. And if he does, I'll just say you needed it for an emergency. Medical bills, something. He's so soft-hearted about family stuff, he'll probably feel guilty for not offering first. They laughed together, and I took a screenshot of my monitoring dashboard, timestamping every transaction, every laugh, every word. The evidence collection was automatic, but old habits die hard. Documentation, verification, proof. Okay, I need to put this back, Sarah said. Same place I found it. He'll never know. But I already knew. I knew about the other card she'd cloned last month. I knew about the forged signatures on the account access forms. I knew about the offshore accounts she thought she'd hidden so cleverly. I knew about the attorney she'd been consulting about divorce. The same attorney who, coincidentally, had a brother working in my legal department who owed me several favors. I knew everything I'd known for 6 weeks. And I'd let it happen because you can't prosecute intent. You can't prove conspiracy until the crime is actually committed. You can't protect yourself from betrayal until the knife is already in motion. And then, only then, can you catch the hand that holds it. Sarah's footsteps approached again. The drawer opened. The wallet settled back into place. The drawer closed. She paused. And I wondered if some part of her felt it. The shift in the air. The change in pressure that comes when you've crossed a line you can't uncross. "Sweet dreams, honey," she whispered. The bedroom door closed. I waited 5 minutes, then 10. Then I heard the distant sound of our guest room door closing. Sarah had been sleeping there lately, claiming my snoring had gotten worse. Another convenient excuse. I sat up and looked at my phone. 3:31 a.m. 50 minutes until I needed to set things in motion. 50 minutes until a series of automated processes I'd set up weeks ago would begin their cascade. 50 minutes until Sarah's phone would start buzzing with messages she wouldn't be able to explain. Messages from accounts she thought were secret. Messages from people she thought were discreet. Messages that would make her realize too late that the man she'd underestimated had been 3 steps ahead the entire time. I opened my laptop again and navigated to the folder marked Contingency. Inside were 17 subfolders, each one dedicated to a different aspect of what was about to unfold. Financial, legal, digital, social. Each one meticulously prepared. Each one waiting for this exact moment. In software security, we have a term, honeypot. It's a trap set to detect or deflect unauthorized access. You make something look vulnerable, make it look easy, and you wait for someone to take the bait. Once they do, you don't stop them. You watch, you record, you gather evidence, and then when you have everything you need, you close the trap. The black card was my honeypot. Sarah was the bait taker. And in about 50 minutes, the trap was going to close. I looked at the photo on my nightstand. Our wedding day 5 years ago. Sarah in her dress, me and my tux, both of us laughing at something the photographer had said. We looked happy. Maybe we were happy. Maybe it was real once. Or maybe I'd just been too focused on building an empire to notice I was sleeping next to someone who saw me as an ATM with a heartbeat. I checked my watch again. 47 minutes. I began typing the first message. It would go to Melissa's phone at exactly 4:21 a.m. from a number she wouldn't recognize, but wouldn't be able to ignore. 3 words that would change everything. He knows everything. The second message would follow 60 seconds later. Something's happening. And then, and this was the part I'd spent the most time planning, silence. Complete, absolute silence. No follow-up, no explanation. Just those 2 messages and the terrible weight of uncertainty. Because that's what Sarah had given me, wasn't it? Uncertainty, doubt, the poison of wondering if the person sleeping next to you is the person they claim to be. Now she'd get to feel it too. I finished setting up the automated sequence and sat back against the headboard. The city was starting to wake up outside. Early delivery trucks, the first trains, the ambient hum of 8 million people beginning their days. Somewhere out there, people were waking up to good news and bad news, to love and to loss, to beginnings and endings. I was waking up to the end of my marriage and the beginning of something else, something harder, something colder, something necessary. My phone buzzed, a notification from my security system. I pulled up the feed and watched as the cameras throughout the apartment showed me what I'd been recording all night. Sarah in the living room, phone pressed to her ear, smiling. Sarah in the bedroom, lifting my wallet with steady hands. Sarah in the hallway, whispering her victory to her sister. All of it saved. All of it time-stamped. All of it admissible. I looked at the clock. 42 minutes. In 42 minutes, Sarah's world would start to crack slowly. At first, just a buzz on her phone, a message that didn't make sense. Then another, then silence. The kind of silence that screams louder than any accusation. And me? I'd be in the shower getting ready for my 7 a.m. board meeting, acting like nothing had changed, because that's what you do when you're playing a long game. You don't show your hand until every card is exactly where you need it. I closed my laptop and lay back down, but I didn't close my eyes. I stared at the ceiling and thought about trust, about love, about the space between what we promise each other and what we actually do when we think no one's watching. Sarah had made her choice. Now she'd live with the consequences. The clock ticked toward 4:21 a.m., and I smiled again in the darkness, not with joy, but with the grim satisfaction of someone who'd built a perfect trap and watched it spring exactly as planned. 50 minutes later, her phone would buzz, and everything would change. The shower water was scalding exactly the way I liked it. Steam filled the bathroom as I stood under the rainfall head, watching rivulets of water cascade down the Italian marble tiles Sarah had insisted we install last year. $43,000 for bathroom renovations. An investment in our home, she'd said. Our home. The irony wasn't lost on me now as I shampooed my hair with the overpriced organic products she bought from that boutique in Soho. Another $400 a month I'd never questioned. I checked my waterproof watch. 4:19 a.m. 2 minutes. My phone sat on the bathroom counter connected to the speaker system, playing the morning news at low volume. Anyone listening, and I knew Sarah had been listening to my routines for months, would hear exactly what they expected. The shower running, NPR discussing market futures. The normal, predictable pattern of a man who had no idea his life had just been ransacked. 4:20 a.m. I turned off the water and reached for a towel, watching my phone screen through the glass shower door. The automated system I'd built was elegant in its simplicity. No human intervention required, just cold, precise code executing at exactly the right moment. 4:21 a.m. The message sent. I wrapped the towel around my waist and picked up my phone, opening the monitoring app that gave me access to every device on our home network. Sarah's phone was in the guest bedroom, and I watched as the screen lit up with the incoming text. From her perspective, it would look like it came from a blocked number. Untraceable, threatening, immediate. He knows everything. I dried off slowly, methodically, giving her time to process, to panic, to wonder. The camera feed from the guest bedroom showed her sitting up in bed staring at her phone. Even in the grainy night vision footage, I could see her face changed, the confusion, then the fear. She typed something, probably, "Who is this?" The message wouldn't deliver. The number was a ghost, a digital phantom that existed just long enough to send those 3 words before dissolving back into the ether. 4:22 a.m. The second message sent. Something's happening. I watched her screen light up again, watched her jump out of bed, her silhouette moving frantically in the darkness. She tried calling the number. It went straight to a disconnect tone. She tried texting again. The messages bounced back as undeliverable. Then, exactly as I'd programmed it, her phone went dark. Not off, just silent. No more messages, no more calls, just the terrible expanding silence of consequences rushing toward her like a freight train she couldn't see, but could definitely hear. I put on my suit, charcoal gray, custom tailored from that place in London Sarah loved to brag about to her friends. "My husband only wears bespoke," she'd say, as if my choice of clothing reflected her taste rather than simple practicality. A good suit was armor in the business world. Today, it would serve the same purpose in what was left of my marriage. White shirt, navy tie, Italian leather shoes that cost more than most people's monthly rent. I dressed like a man getting ready for a board meeting because I was getting ready for a board meeting. The fact that my marriage was simultaneously imploding was just another item on today's agenda. 4:31 a.m. I heard Sarah's door open. Her footsteps, no longer careful, moved quickly down the hallway. She knocked on the bathroom door, sharp, urgent raps that suggested she was past the point of pretending everything was fine. "Marcus." Her voice was tight. "Marcus, are you awake?" I opened the door, toothbrush in hand, looking exactly like a man who'd been startled in the middle of his morning routine. "Sarah, it's 4:30 in the morning. What's wrong?" Her hair was disheveled, her sleep shirt wrinkled, but it was her eyes that told the story, wide, darting, afraid. She was holding her phone like it might explode. "Did you? Have you been getting weird messages?" I frowned, playing my part perfectly. 5 years in corporate negotiations had taught me how to control every muscle in my face. "Weird messages? No? Why? She looked down at her phone, then back at me. "Someone texted me twice from a blocked number. It doesn't make any sense." "What did they say?" I turned back to the mirror, continuing to brush my teeth. Casual, unconcerned. A man whose biggest worry was morning breath. "Nothing. Nothing important. Probably spam or something." But her voice betrayed her. She was lying, and she knew I could tell, which meant she had to decide in real time how much to commit to the lie. I rinsed my mouth and turned to face her. "Sarah, if someone's harassing you, we should report it. Do you want me to call the police?" "No." Too quick, too emphatic. She caught herself. No, it's fine. It's probably nothing, just weird, at this hour." I nodded slowly, watching her face. "Okay. Well, if it happens again, let me know. We can get the number traced." I paused, though. "You said it was blocked." "Yeah, blocked." She was backing toward the door now, phone clutched to her chest. "Sorry for waking you. I just got spooked." "It's fine. I was already up." I checked my watch, the vintage Patek Philippe she'd once suggested I sell because we needed to be more liquid. I'd laughed it off then. "Board meeting in a few hours. You know how it is, right?" "Your meeting." She was still standing there, and I could see the gears turning behind her eyes. Should she say something? Should she confess? Should she ask about the money? She did none of those things. "I'll let you finish getting ready," she said finally, and retreated to the guest bedroom. I waited until I heard her door close, then pulled out my phone and checked the financial monitoring system. The $170,000 was sitting exactly where I knew it would be, $50,000 in Melissa's account. The rest distributed across 3 accounts Sarah had opened using variations of her maiden name. But that wasn't the interesting part. The interesting part was what had happened at 4:23 a.m., 2 minutes after the first message arrived. Sarah had logged into her email and sent a panicked message to Melissa. "Did you tell anyone? Did you say anything to anyone?" Melissa's response time-stamped 4:26 a.m. "No. What's wrong? What happened? I got a message. Someone knows." "Knows what about the card? How could anyone know? We were careful." "I don't know, but something's wrong. I can feel it." "You're paranoid. He was asleep. You said yourself he was asleep. Then who sent the messages?" "What messages?" "In messages." And that's where the conversation ended because Sarah realized something crucial. The messages had only come to her phone, not to Melissa's, which meant whoever sent them was specifically targeting her, which meant this wasn't random, which meant someone knew. I finished getting ready and made my way to the kitchen. The apartment was silent except for the ambient sounds of the city waking up outside. I started the espresso machine, a $12,000 Italian contraption Sarah had insisted was necessary for proper coffee, and watched the dark liquid drip into the cup. 5:47 a.m. The guest bedroom door opened again. Sarah emerged, this time dressed in yoga pants and an oversized sweater. She'd brushed her hair and put on makeup, trying to look normal, but her hands were shaking as she poured herself coffee. "You're up early," I observed, leaning against the counter. "Couldn't sleep after those texts." She wrapped both hands around her mug. "Marcus, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Have you noticed anything weird lately with your accounts or credit cards?" There it was, the fishing expedition. She was trying to figure out if I'd discovered the theft without directly admitting there was something to discover. I took a sip of my espresso. "Weird. How?" "I don't know. Unusual charges, anything like that?" "Not that I've noticed." "Why? Did you see something on one of the statements?" I pulled out my phone, making a show of opening my banking app. "I can check right now if you're worried about fraud." "No." Again, too fast. "No, I'm sure it's fine. With those weird messages, I started thinking about security, hackers and identity theft and all that." "Good point." I nodded seriously. "Actually, maybe I should do a full audit of all our accounts just to be safe. I'll have my assistant pull all the statements from the last 6 months. Better to be thorough, right?" The color drained from her face. 6 months? That seems excessive. I'm sure everything's fine. You just said you were worried about security." "I was. I am. But I don't want to waste your time on a false alarm." "It's not a waste of time if it protects us." I watched her carefully, each word a small incision. "Our financial security is important, everything we've built together. I'd hate for someone to take advantage of us." She sat down her coffee mug with a hand that trembled visibly. "Right. Of course, I just meant..." My phone buzzed, saved by the bell, or in this case, by the carefully timed alert I'd set for exactly this moment. I glanced at the screen and frowned. Damn. Emergency board meeting got moved up. I need to leave now. Now, but it's not even 6 o'clock. Crisis with the Singapore office. Time zones. I grabbed my briefcase and jacket. I'll probably be gone all day. "Don't wait up for dinner." I kissed her cheek, a gesture so routine it required no thought, no feeling. Her skin was cold. "Marcus." Her voice stopped me at the door. "Yeah, do you?" She paused, and for a moment I saw something in her face that might have been regret or maybe just fear. "Do you trust me?" The question hung in the air between us, heavy with implications she couldn't possibly understand. Did I trust her? I had trusted her. I'd trusted her with my money, my home, my heart. I trusted her enough to marry her, to build a life with her, to imagine a future where we grew old together. And she'd taken that trust and sold it for $170,000. And whatever sick thrill came from thinking she'd outsmarted me. But I didn't say any of that. Instead, I smiled the same smile I used in negotiations when I was about to close a deal that would bankrupt the other side. "Of course I trust you. You're my wife." The words were true. I just didn't mention what tense I was using. I had trusted her. Past tense. That man was gone. The man standing in this kitchen was someone different, someone colder, someone who'd spent 6 weeks building an airtight case against the woman he'd promised to love forever. "I love you," she said. And the crazy thing was, she might have even meant it in her way. In the way someone loves a resource they've been exploiting. The way you love your favorite ATM. "I love you too," I lied and walked out the door. The elevator ride down was 47 floors of silence. I watched the numbers descend, each one marking a step further away from the man I used to be. The lobby was empty except for the night doorman who nodded respectfully as I passed. "Early morning, Mr. Chen." "Every morning, James." I handed him a $50 bill, something I did routinely. How's your daughter's college fund coming along? His face lit up. Really well, sir. Thanks to your advice about those investments. Can't thank you enough. I smiled, and this time it was genuine. James was a good man, hardworking, honest, the kind of person who deserved help, the kind of person I'd spent my career trying to support through jobs, through investments, through the foundation Sarah knew nothing about because she'd never asked what I did with my money beyond what she could spend. My driver was waiting outside, the black Mercedes idling in the pre-dawn darkness. Good morning, Marcus. Morning, David. I slid into the back seat and pulled out my laptop. Office, please. And David, it's going to be a long day. Understood, sir. As we pulled into traffic, I opened the file marked Phase 2. The first messages had been sent. Sarah was scared, confused, off balance. Now came the pressure. Systematic, relentless, perfectly calibrated to make her understand that her perfect crime was unraveling in slow motion. At 7 a.m., she'd receive an automated alert from the bank about unusual activity on the black card. Nothing specific, just enough to make her check. At 8 a.m., Melissa would get a similar alert about her account. Large deposits flagged for review by the fraud department. At 9 a.m., Sarah's secret accounts would be temporarily frozen, pending verification of her identity, a standard procedure, nothing to worry about, unless you had something to hide. At 10 a.m., she'd receive a calendar invitation from my attorney for a meeting tomorrow afternoon. Subject line, important asset review and marital property discussion. Each piece designed to tighten the noose, each one deniable as routine or coincidence. Each one building toward the moment when she'd realized she wasn't dealing with the trusting, distracted husband she thought she'd married. She was dealing with the man who'd built a $300 million company from nothing by being smarter, more thorough, and more ruthless than everyone else in the room. My phone buzzed. A message from my private investigator. Surveillance logs uploaded, audio files cleaned and time-stamped, video footage backed up to secure server. Everything admissible. I typed back, excellent, stand by for next phase. Through the car window, I watched the city wake up, coffee shops opening, people rushing to catch trains. The ordinary rhythm of life continuing while mine detonated in carefully controlled increments. Sarah's phone would be buzzing now, the bank alert. She'd be panicking, trying to figure out what triggered it, whether it was connected to the mysterious messages, whether I somehow knew. The answer, of course, was yes. I knew everything. And in about 6 hours, she'd start to know that I knew. But she still wouldn't know what I was going to do about it. That was the beauty of the plan. The uncertainty, the waiting, the slow, creeping realization that the ground beneath her feet wasn't solid anymore. That the life she'd been stealing from was about to foreclose. The Mercedes pulled up to my office building, all glass and steel, and testament to what happened when you combined intelligence with ruthless execution. I'd built this. Every floor, every employee, every line of code that ran through our servers, I'd built it from nothing, and no one, not even my wife, was going to take it from me without consequences. Thank you, David. I'll call when I need pickup. Have a good day, sir. I walked through the lobby, nodding to security, taking the private elevator to the executive floor. My assistant, Jennifer, was already at her desk despite the early hour. Morning, Marcus. Coffee's ready in your office. You're a lifesaver, Jen. I know, she grinned. Also, your attorney called? He said to remind you about the document review this afternoon. Tell him I'll be there at 2 o'clock. In my office, I sat down and pulled up the live feed from our apartment. Sarah was pacing in the kitchen, phone pressed to her ear, probably calling Melissa, probably panicking, probably starting to understand that something was very, very wrong. I sipped my coffee and opened the folder marked Phase 3. This was going to be a long day. But then again, she'd started this game at 2 a.m. I was just finishing it. The board meeting was scheduled for 7 a.m., but I'd arrived an hour early. The executive conference room on the 42nd floor was empty. Floor-to-ceiling windows offering an unobstructed view of the city as dawn broke across the skyline. Manhattan stretched out before me, all concrete and ambition. The kind of view that reminded you why you fought so hard to climb this high in the first place. I'd bought this building 6 years ago when everyone said I was overextended. Now it was worth 4 times what I'd paid. I knew how to spot a good investment. I'd thought Sarah was one. My laptop sat open on the glossy conference table, split screen showing 2 feeds. The live monitoring of Sarah's phone activity on the left, the financial tracking dashboard on the right. It was 6:14 a.m. and she'd already made 17 phone calls in the past hour. Melissa, her mother. Melissa again, a number I didn't recognize that traced back to a prepaid cell phone. Interesting. Then back to Melissa. None of them were going well based on the duration. 23 seconds, 41 seconds, 97 seconds. These weren't conversations. They were panic attacks interrupted by dial tones. At 7:20 a.m., exactly as scheduled, the bank alert had landed in her inbox. I pulled up the email monitoring system. Another little piece of infrastructure I'd put in place 3 weeks ago when I'd finally accepted that my marriage wasn't troubled, it was fraudulent. The email was perfectly crafted. Official bank letterhead professionally worded, just vague enough to be terrifying. Dear valued customer, we've detected unusual activity on card ending in 8472. As part of our commitment to your security, we're conducting a routine verification. No action is required at this time, but please be available for a call from our fraud department within the next 24 to 48 hours. Thank you for banking with us. Security Department. Sarah had opened it at 7:30 a.m. She'd read it 4 times based on the tracking pixels embedded in the HTML. Then she'd forwarded it to Melissa with a single line. This is it. He knows. Melissa's response came back 3 minutes later. You don't know that. Could be automatic. Banks do this all the time. At 7 a.m. the same morning, I get those messages. This isn't a coincidence. So what do we do, Melissa? That's where the email chain ended, because neither of them knew what to do. They'd planned the theft. They'd executed it. They'd celebrated, but they'd never planned for the possibility that I might actually notice, that I might actually care, that I might actually respond. Amateur hour. I closed the laptop as my board members started filtering in. Catherine Wu, my CFO, arrived first, sharp as always, in a charcoal pantsuit, carrying a tablet and what I knew would be her 3rd espresso of the morning. Marcus, you look terrible. Good morning to you too, Catherine. I'm serious. When's the last time you slept? She sat down across from me, concerned, creasing her forehead. Catherine had been with me since the beginning, when the company was just me and 2 programmers working out of a rented office in Queens. She'd seen me through the growth, the near bankruptcy in year 3, the acquisition offers I'd turned down, the IPO that made us all wealthy beyond measure. She knew me better than almost anyone, which is why I'd told her nothing about Sarah. Rough night, I said, which was true. But I'm fine. Rough night or rough marriage? I looked up sharply. What? She held up her hands. I'm not crying, but I've known you for 8 years, Marcus. You don't show up an hour early to board meetings when things are fine at home. You don't look like you've aged 5 years and 2 months when everything's great. Catherine, I'm just saying if you need anything. Legal referrals, someone to talk to, a hitman. She smiled, but her eyes were serious. I'm here. I appreciate it. And I did, but I'm handling it. That's what worries me. She opened her tablet. Anyway, Singapore is a mess. The server migration got botched. We've got about 4 hours to fix it before markets open over there, and the local team is about ready to mutiny. I forced myself to focus business. This I could control. What do they need? You basically someone to make executive decisions fast. The project manager is paralyzed by the fear of screwing up. Get him on video call. We'll walk through it together. I pulled up the technical specs on my laptop, compartmentalizing. Sarah was one problem. Singapore was another. I'd built my career on the ability to handle multiple crises simultaneously. This was just another day. Except it wasn't. At 8:30 a.m., as Catherine and I were deep in code review with the Singapore team, my phone buzzed with a notification. Melissa's bank alert had triggered. I watched her account freeze in real time. The $50,000 Sarah had transferred now locked behind a wall of bureaucratic red tape that would take days to untangle. At 8:07 a.m., Melissa called Sarah. The call lasted 6 minutes and 43 seconds. And while I couldn't hear it, I decided not to activate the listening devices today. Wanting some distance from the emotional fallout, I could imagine the conversation. Panic, accusations, the beginning of betrayal between thieves. At 8:15 a.m., Sarah tried to access her secret accounts. All three came back with error messages requiring identity verification through two-factor authentication sent to a phone number that was no longer in service. She tried 4 times, then 5. The frustration was almost visible through the data logs. "Marcus?" Catherine's voice pulled me back. "You with us?" "Yeah, sorry. Go ahead." The board meeting proceeded with military efficiency. We solved Singapore's problem, approved the Q4 budget, discussed the acquisition offer from a competitor that I was going to decline, and reviewed the security protocols for our new government contract. Normal routine, the kind of corporate choreography I could perform in my sleep, all while my phone buzzed periodically with updates about my disintegrating marriage. 9:03 a.m. Sarah's secret accounts officially frozen. 9:17 a.m. Sarah called the bank, routed to an automated system, gave up after 12 minutes on hold. 9:34 a.m. Melissa called Sarah, 2 minutes 18 seconds, probably not friendly. 9:41 a.m. Sarah tried to call me. I let it go to voicemail. 9:43 a.m. She tried again. Voicemail. 9:44 a.m. She texted, "Hey, can you call me when you have a minute? Need to ask you something." I typed back at 9:52 a.m. "In meetings all day. Everything okay?" Her response was immediate. "Yeah, fine. Just some banking stuff." "Weird fraud alerts. Can you check your email?" "Which account?" "There." The pause before her response told me she was trying to decide how much to admit. Finally, the black card. "Did you get an alert this morning?" "No. Should I have?" "I got one on my phone. Just wanted to make sure everything's fine." "Why would you get an alert for my card?" Another pause, longer this time. She was trapped and she knew it. If she admitted she'd been monitoring my accounts, I'd ask why. If she claimed it was a mistake, I'd wonder how she was getting my banking notifications. It came to my email. Must have been a glitch. You know how technology is. "Want me to call the bank?" "No. No need. I'm sure it's nothing. Sorry to bother you." "No bother. Love you." I didn't wait for a response. At 10 a.m., the calendar invitation hit her inbox. I watched the email tracking pixels confirm she'd opened it, read it, stared at it for a full 3 minutes based on the session duration. Meeting request, asset review, and marital property discussion from James Morrison. Morrison and Associates Legal, 2. Sarah Chen, Marcus Chen, when tomorrow, 2:00 p.m. Where? Morrison and Associates, 52nd floor, Rockefeller Center. Agenda, comprehensive review of marital assets, property division protocols, and financial documentation requirements per New York state law. She forwarded it to Melissa within seconds. "Look at this. Oh my God. Is he divorcing you? Did he find out about the money?" "Sarah, answer me." I don't know. 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 What are you going to do? I need to talk to him. I need to explain. Explain what? That we stole $170,000? That's what you're going to explain. We didn't steal. We're married. It's community property. Tell that to his lawyer. God, Sarah, what did you get us into? What did I get us into? This was your idea? And there it was, the fracture. When the pressure got high enough, even blood turned on blood. I leaned back in my office chair. The board meeting had ended 20 minutes ago, and I'd retreated here to watch the dominoes fall in private. My office was a monument to success. Original art on the walls, custom furniture, shelves lined with awards and patents, and photos from better days. There was one of Sarah and me at the company's 5th anniversary party, both of us champagne drunk and happy, her arm around my waist, my lips pressed to her temple. I'd thought we were building something together. Turns out she was just casing the joint. At 10:47 a.m., Sarah called my office line. Jennifer intercepted it. Marcus Chen's office. Hi, Jennifer, it's Sarah. Is Marcus available? I'm sorry, Mrs. Chen, he's in back-to-back meetings until this evening. Can I take a message? Can you tell him I really need to talk to him? It's important. Of course. I'll let him know as soon as he's free. When will that be? He has a 2 p.m. meeting off-site and then client calls until 6:30. I could probably squeeze you in around 7. That's hours from now. I understand. Would you like to leave a more detailed message? If it's urgent, I can interrupt his current meeting. The pause, the calculation. If she said it was urgent, she'd have to explain why. If she didn't, she'd have to wait. Either way, the control she thought she had was slipping through her fingers like water. No, that's okay. Just have him call me when he can. Absolutely. Is there anything else I can help you with? No. Thank you, Jennifer. I listened to the whole conversation through the intercom, watching the audio levels spike and fall with Sarah's distress. Jennifer disconnected and buzzed me. She sounds pretty upset, boss. You want me to clear some time? No, she'll be fine. You sure? She sounded kind of desperate. I'm sure. I checked my watch. I need to step out for lunch. Hold all calls, even from Sarah. Especially from Sarah. I took the private elevator down to the parking garage where David was waiting with the car. Where to, sir? Lower Manhattan. I'll give you the address. 20 minutes later, we pulled up in front of a nondescript office building in the financial district. I took the elevator to the 14th floor where James Morrison was waiting in a conference room with enough documents to fill a small library. James was old school 63. Gray hair, 3-piece suit, the kind of attorney who still used fountain pens and believed in the sanctity of contracts. He'd handled my prenup with Sarah 5 years ago. I'd been embarrassed to ask for it then, feeling like I was planning for failure before we'd even started. He'd assured me it was just good business. Now I was grateful for his pragmatism. Marcus. He stood and shook my hand. I've reviewed everything you sent. Audio recordings, financial transactions, email archives, video footage. It's thorough. Almost disturbingly thorough. I'm a thorough person. Clearly, he gestured to the documents. The prenup is airtight. She gets nothing in the event of infidelity or financial fraud, both of which you've documented extensively. The apartment stays with you. It was purchased before the marriage with your funds. The vehicles, same story. Joint accounts will be split, but given that you've contributed 97% of the funds in those accounts, you'll recover the vast majority. What about the stolen money? That's the interesting part. James pulled out a folder marked Criminal Charges Options. You have 3 potential paths here. 1, civil recovery. Sue her and her sister for the $170,000 plus damages. Easiest path, but it's just money. 2, criminal charges. Fraud, identity theft, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, much more serious. Federal crimes, potentially. 3, negotiated settlement. You drop everything in exchange for a clean divorce and signed NDA. What would you recommend? He studied me over his reading glasses. What do you want, Marcus? Revenge? Justice? Just to be done with this? I looked out the window at the city below. What did I want? I'd spent 6 weeks asking myself that question. Did I want Sarah in prison? Did I want her publicly humiliated? Did I want her to suffer the way I'd suffered when I realized the person I loved most had been systematically betraying me? Or did I just want her gone? I want her to understand what she did, I said finally. I want her to know that I've always known that every move she made, I was 3 steps ahead. I want her to live with the fact that she threw away our marriage for $170,000 and that I documented every second of it. That sounds like revenge, maybe, but it also sounds like consequences. James nodded slowly. The meeting tomorrow. You want her to walk in expecting a conversation and walk out understanding she's been outmaneuvered. Something like that. And after that, she signs the divorce papers, returns the money, and disappears from my life. No charges if she cooperates. But if she fights, I met his eyes. Then we use everything. Mutually assured destruction. Call it incentive for good behavior. James started organizing the documents. I'll prepare 2 sets of papers, the friendly divorce and the scorched earth version. Tomorrow at 2, we present option 1. If she's smart, she takes it. If not, he shrugged. Well, you've given me plenty of ammunition. I stood to leave, then paused. James, the prenup. When you insisted I get one, did you know? Did you see something in her that I missed? He was quiet for a moment. I see something in everyone, Marcus. People are rarely as simple as we want them to be. I didn't know Sarah would do this specifically, but I knew that money changes people, and you have a lot of money, so I should trust no one. You should trust people to be themselves, and you should protect yourself accordingly. He smiled sadly. It's not cynical. It's just realistic. I left his office feeling older than I had when I walked in. The Mercedes was waiting, David standing by the door. Back to the office, sir. Number. I pulled out my phone and checked the tracking. Sarah was still at the apartment pacing based on the movement data. Melissa had called her 3 more times. The desperation was building. Take me to the waterfront, Brooklyn Bridge Park. Just to drive, or I need to think. We drove through the city in silence, crossing into Brooklyn, following the East River south until the Manhattan skyline stretched out across the water like a promise that had been broken. David parked and I got out, walking along the pier while he waited discreetly by the car. The water was gray today, choppy with wind. A ferry passed, tourists on the deck taking photos of the bridges, the buildings, the iconic vista that sold the dream of New York to millions. I'd bought that dream. I'd lived it. Built a company, married a beautiful woman, owned an apartment with a view that people fantasized about. And somewhere along the way, the dream had curdled into something else. My phone buzzed. Sarah again. Marcus, please call me. I really need to talk to you. Something's wrong with the bank accounts and I'm getting weird emails and I don't know what to do. I typed back. Can't talk now. Emergency with Singapore office. We'll call tonight. Another lie. But what was one more at this point? The real call would come tomorrow at 2 p.m. in James Morrison's office when Sarah walked in expecting to discuss marital assets and discovered instead that her marriage was over and her crimes were documented. I wondered how she'd react. Denial? Anger? Would she try to explain it away? Convince me it wasn't what it looked like? Would she cry and beg for forgiveness? Or would she finally show me who she really was underneath the performance she'd been giving for 5 years? Tomorrow I'd find out. My phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Sarah. It was my private investigator. Subject is attempting to factory reset her phone. Should I block it? I smiled grimly. She was trying to destroy evidence. Too late, but points for effort. I typed back, letter. Everything's already backed up to our servers. She's deleting copies. Understood. Also, the sister just booked a one-way flight to Miami, departing tomorrow at noon. Interesting. Melissa was running, which meant she knew how bad this was going to get. Keep tracking her. I want to know where she goes. Will do. I stood there for another 20 minutes watching the water and thinking about trust, about love, about the distance between who we pretend to be and who we actually are when we think no one's watching. Sarah had made her choice. Tomorrow she'd learn I'd made mine. I walked back to the car where David was reading a newspaper. Ready, sir? Yeah. Take me back to the office. I have a divorce to finalize. The office was nearly empty by the time I returned at 3 p.m. Most of the staff had left for early holiday breaks. It was the week before Christmas, though you wouldn't know it from looking at me. I'd forgotten about the holidays entirely, too consumed with the architecture of my marriage's demolition to think about anything as mundane as seasonal celebrations. Jennifer was still at her desk, loyalty personified. Though I'd told her 100 times she didn't need to match my hours. Any calls? I asked, though I already knew the answer. 17. From your wife. She handed me a stack of message slips, all marked urgent. She's persistent. That's one word for it, Marcus. Jennifer stood, and something in her posture told me she was about to cross the line from assistant to friend. We'd worked together long enough that she'd earned that right. I don't know what's going on with you two, and I'm not asking, but that woman sounds terrified. Whatever you're doing to her, I'm not doing anything to her, Jen. I'm just letting her live with the consequences of what she did to me. The words came out harder than I intended. Jennifer stepped back slightly, and I saw something in her face I'd never seen before when she looked at me. Weariness. Okay, she said quietly. I'll be here until 5 if you need anything. I retreated to my office and closed the door, feeling the weight of the day settling into my bones. The view from my window showed the city transitioning from afternoon to evening, lights beginning to sparkle in the buildings, the sky fading from blue to purple to that particular shade of urban darkness that never quite reached black. My phone sat on the desk, silent for once. Sarah had stopped calling around 2:30 p.m., which meant she'd either given up or switched tactics. I pulled up the monitoring system to check which she'd left the apartment. The GPS tracker in her phone, installed months ago with her full consent back when we'd gotten the new devices and I'd suggested we enable location sharing for safety, showed her moving through Midtown. She was heading west on 47th Street, then north on 6th Avenue. She stopped at Rockefeller Center, right below James Morrison's office. I sat forward, watching the blue dot that represented my wife hover at the building's entrance. She stayed there for 7 minutes. Then she moved inside. Elevator bank stopped on the 52nd floor. She was at my attorney's office. My phone rang. James Morrison. Your wife is in my lobby, he said without preamble, demanding to see me. Don't see her. I wasn't planning to. But Marcus, she's making a scene, crying, saying she knows tomorrow's meeting is about divorce, saying she can explain everything. He paused. What do you want me to do? I closed my eyes, imagining Sarah in that pristine lobby with its leather furniture and abstract art, tears running down her face, performing grief for an audience of one unimpressed receptionist. Part of me, the part that had loved her, once wanted to go to her, to hear her out, to give her the chance to explain. But I'd already heard her explanation. I'd heard it at 2 a.m. when she'd told Melissa I was too stupid to notice. I'd heard it in her laughter when she'd called me soft-hearted and easy to manipulate. I'd heard it in every lie she'd told since. Have security escort her out, I said, politely but firmly. And James, record everything. I want documentation that she came to your office uninvited, trying to interfere with legal proceedings. Already recording. My receptionist knows the protocol. He sighed. This is going to get uglier before it gets better. You know that. I know. I watched the blue dot hover for another 12 minutes, then move toward the elevator, down to the lobby, out to the street. She stood outside the building for a long time, 17 minutes, according to the timestamp, before finally moving away north on 6th Avenue, east on 52nd. She was heading toward our apartment, but slowly, the path erratic. She stopped at a bar on 3rd Avenue, went inside, stayed. At 4:47 p.m., she called me. I let it ring. She left a voicemail. I waited 10 minutes before playing it. Marcus. Her voice was raw, broken. I know you're angry. I know you know about the money. I know everything's falling apart, and I know it's my fault. A pause, the sound of her breathing. But I need you to understand why. I need you to let me explain. Please, please call me back. Please don't do this without talking to me first. Whatever you're planning, whatever tomorrow is about, just give me a chance to make this right. I'm begging you, Marcus. I love you. I know but I love you, and we can fix this. We can fix anything if you just talk to me. The message ended with a sound that might have been a sob or might have been her hanging up. I played it again, then a third time, listening not to the words but to the tone, the cadence, trying to determine if it was genuine or just another performance. Was she sorry she'd done it, or sorry she'd been caught? My phone buzzed with a text from Catherine. Saw your wife in the building lobby earlier. She looked rough. You okay? I typed back. Define. Okay, fair point. Want to grab a drink? You look like you could use one. Rain check. Have to prepare for tomorrow. The asset review meeting. Yeah, I saw the calendar. Marcus, are you sure about this? What else would I be? I don't know. Devastated? Heartbroken? Human? I stared at the message for a long time before responding. Been there. Moved past it. Now I'm just executing a plan. That's what worries me. You're one of the best strategists I know. But strategy without emotion is just revenge wearing a suit. Maybe revenge is what's called for. Maybe. Or maybe you'll regret how you handled this for the rest of your life. Just think about it. That's all I'm asking. I set the phone down and turned back to the window. The city glittered below. Millions of lives intersecting and diverging. Millions of stories playing out in millions of rooms. Somewhere down there, Sarah was sitting in a bar, probably ordering her third glass of wine, probably calling Melissa again, probably trying to figure out how to salvage a situation that was already long past salvaging. Did I feel guilty? Yes. Did I feel vindicated? Also, yes. Did I know which emotion I was supposed to listen to? No idea. At 6:15 p.m., I locked my office and headed home. The apartment was dark when I arrived, no sign that Sarah had returned. I stood in the entryway for a moment, looking at the space we'd shared for 5 years. Every piece of furniture had a story. The couch we'd picked out together after 3 hours of arguing about fabric. The dining table where we'd hosted dinner parties with friends who would now have to choose sides. The kitchen where she'd made me breakfast on lazy Sunday mornings, both of us still in pajamas. Coffee and newspapers, and the comfortable silence of people who didn't need to fill every moment with conversation. Had any of it been real? I walked to my office, the one room in the apartment that was entirely mine, where Sarah rarely ventured because she found it too sterile, too corporate. The irony being that this room with its filing cabinets and servers and triple-locked door was where I documented her betrayal in meticulous detail. I pulled up the master file. Sarah, evidence collection. 643 pages of documents, audio transcripts, video timestamps, financial records, email archives, text message logs. Every piece of evidence cataloged, cross-referenced, notarized enough to bury her in criminal court if it came to that. But was that what I wanted? Catherine's words echoed. Strategy without emotion is just revenge wearing a suit. My phone buzzed. Sarah again, but this time just a text. I'm staying at Melissa's tonight. Need space to think. I know you need space too. can we please talk tomorrow before the meeting? Just us, no lawyers. I typed back, see you at 2 p.m. Marcus, please. I'm asking for 30 minutes, just 30 minutes to explain what's there to explain. I heard everything at 2 a.m. Monday. You thought I was asleep. I wasn't. The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. 5 minutes passed with no response. Then you've known since Monday. I've known for 6 weeks. Monday was just the confirmation. Sarah, 6 weeks since I found the Cartier receipt in your car. The watch you bought for Melissa with my money. Oh my God. Yeah. All this time you've been watching me, recording me protecting myself. There's a difference. This is insane. You're insane. I'm thorough. Always have been. You used to say you loved that about me. I did love that about you. I loved everything about you. May, past tense. Interesting choice, Marcus. See you tomorrow, Sarah. 2 p.m. Don't be late. I silenced my phone and poured myself a Scotch Malin 25, a bottle I'd been saving for a special occasion. If the end of my marriage wasn't special, I didn't know what was. The Scotch burned going down, expensive and smooth and utterly wasted on my current emotional state. I took the glass to the window and looked out at the city, at all those lives I'd never know, all those stories I'd never hear. How many of them were standing in their apartments right now drinking expensive scotch, wondering how they'd missed the signs that their life was a lie. At 8:32 p.m. my phone rang. Not Sarah this time. Melissa, I answered. You son of a... Her voice was pure venom. You set us up. All of this was a setup. I gave you access to enough rope. You hanged yourselves. Sarah is destroyed, absolutely destroyed. She's been crying for 3 hours straight. She stole $170,000 from me and laughed about how stupid I was. Forgive me if I'm not moved by her tears. It was my idea, Melissa shouted. She didn't want to do it. I convinced her. So if you want to destroy someone, destroy me. Leave her alone. That's noble, Melissa. But the recordings tell a different story. Sarah was enthusiastic about stealing from me. She called it too easy. She said I was too trusting, too distracted. Basically, a piggy bank with a heartbeat. Those were her words, not yours. She was just talking. She didn't mean. She took the money. She gave you the card numbers. She planned it, executed it, and celebrated it. What part of that sounds like someone who didn't mean it? Silence on the other end. Then what do you want? Money? You want the money back? I'll give it all back. It's frozen in your account. You can't access it. Then unfreeze it. Tell the bank it was a mistake. It wasn't a mistake. It was fraud, and the bank knows it. Marcus, please. Her voice cracked. I know we up. I know we deserve whatever's coming, but Sarah, she really does love you. She made a terrible mistake, but she loves you. If this is love, I'd hate to see what betrayal looks like. Everyone makes mistakes. Not everyone makes $170,000 mistakes while mocking their spouse for being too stupid to notice. You're really going to destroy her over this? Destroy your marriage? Everything you built together? I didn't destroy anything, Melissa. You two did that yourselves. I'm just documenting the rubble. I hung up. The apartment felt too quiet now, too empty. I walked through the rooms, seeing everything differently. The wedding photos on the bookshelf. Lies. The vacation souvenirs. Lies. The personalized towels in the bathroom with our initials intertwined. Lies. Or maybe not lies. Maybe they'd been true once. Maybe Sarah had loved me in the beginning. Maybe somewhere between the wedding and now she'd changed, or I'd changed, or the money had changed everything. I stopped in front of the guest bedroom where Sarah had been sleeping for the past 2 months. Her things were still scattered around, skincare products on the nightstand, clothes draped over the chair, a half-read book on the pillow. The book was a mystery novel, something about a wife who discovers her husband's secret life. The irony wasn't lost on me. My phone buzzed with an email notification. James Morrison. Final documents prepared, 2 sets as requested. Meeting confirmed for 2 p.m. tomorrow. I strongly suggest you reconsider attending. Let me handle it alone. You being there will only make it more emotional and potentially compromise your position. I typed back, I need to be there. I need to see her face when she realizes it's over. That's ego talking, not strategy. Maybe, but I'm going anyway. Your funeral. I'll have tissues ready. I set the phone down and finished my scotch. Tomorrow at 2 p.m., Sarah would walk into that conference room expecting, what? A negotiation? A chance to explain? An opportunity to cry and apologize her way back into my life? Instead, she'd find me sitting next to James Morrison, documents spread across the table, every one of her crimes cataloged and notarized. She'd realized that the mysterious messages, the bank alerts, the frozen accounts, all of it had been orchestrated by me. That the husband she'd thought was too distracted to notice had actually been building a legal fortress around her theft. And then she'd have a choice. Sign the divorce papers and walk away with nothing, or fight and face criminal charges. I knew which one she'd choose. Sarah was many things, but stupid wasn't one of them. She'd sign, she'd cry, she'd probably try one last time to explain, to justify, to make me understand why she'd done it. And I'd sit there impassive, waiting for her signature to dry. The scotch glass was empty. I poured another, heavier this time. Catherine was right. This was revenge, wearing a suit.
But what was I supposed to do? Forgive her? Take her back?
Pretend that hearing her call me stupid and easy to manipulate hadn't fundamentally changed how I saw her, how I saw us, how I saw myself? You can't unhear certain things. You can't unknow certain truths. At 11:47 p.m., I received one last text from Sarah. I know you won't forgive me. I know tomorrow everything ends. But I need you to know that I'm sorry. Really, truly sorry. Not for getting caught, for doing it in the first place. You deserved better. You deserved someone who saw you for who you are, not what you have. I wish I could go back and be that person, but I can't. So all I can say is, I'm sorry, and I hope someday you find someone who deserves you, someone who would never dream of hurting you the way I did. I read it 3 times. It sounded sincere. It sounded like genuine remorse. It sounded like the woman I'd fallen in love with. The one who used to look at me like I hung the moon. The one who'd promised to stand by me through everything. But I'd learned the hard way that Sarah was an excellent performer. I didn't respond. Instead, I walked to my office safe and pulled out a small velvet box I'd hidden there 3 months ago. Inside was a ring, 5-carat, platinum setting, flawless diamond. I'd bought it for our 5th anniversary, planning to surprise her with a vow renewal ceremony, a celebration of everything we'd built, everything we'd become. The jeweler had called it a testament to eternal love. Now it was just evidence of my own stupidity. I closed the box and put it back in the safe, locking it away along with every other remnant of the marriage I'd thought I had. Tomorrow at 2 p.m., that marriage would officially end. Tonight, I'd mourn it alone. I poured a 3rd scotch and settled into my office chair, pulling up the surveillance footage from Monday night one more time, watching Sarah take my wallet, read the numbers, laugh with her sister about how easy it was. Catherine had asked if I was sure about this. I watched Sarah's face on the screen, animated with excitement as she committed fraud, and knew the answer. I was sure. At 1:23 a.m., exhausted and slightly drunk, I finally went to bed. Our bed. The one Sarah and I had shared for 5 years. It felt enormous now. Empty. The sheets cold on her side. I lay there in the darkness, listening to the city breathe outside the windows, and thought about tomorrow. About watching Sarah's face as she realized the full extent of what I'd done, what I knew, what I'd planned. Would I feel vindicated? Probably. Would I feel satisfied? Maybe. Would I feel happy? I already knew the answer to that one. This wasn't about happiness. This hadn't been about happiness for a long time. This was about justice, about consequences, about making sure that when someone betrayed you, stole from you, mocked you for being too trusting, they didn't get to walk away unscathed. Tomorrow, Sarah would learn that lesson, and I would learn whether revenge really did taste as sweet as they said, or if it just left you alone in an empty apartment, drinking expensive scotch, wondering if there was a better way to handle heartbreak than burning everything to the ground. Sleep came eventually, restless and dreamless. Tomorrow would be here soon enough. I woke at 5:30 a.m. to an empty apartment and a phone full of missed calls. 12 from Sarah, 3 from Melissa, 2 from a number I didn't recognize, and 1 from my mother, which was unusual enough that I called her back immediately, stepping out onto the balcony where the December morning air hit like a slap. Marcus. Her voice was tight, controlled the tone she used when she was furious, but too refined to show it. I just got off the phone with Sarah. Of course she had. Mom, she told me everything. The money, the lawyer, the meeting today. She's devastated, Marcus. Absolutely devastated. I watched the sun begin its climb over the East River, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold that seemed inappropriate for the day I had planned. Did she tell you why she's devastated? Did she mention the $170,000 she stole, or just the part where she got caught? She said it was a mistake, a terrible lapse in judgment. It was systematic fraud. Mom premeditated, calculated, and executed with my sister-in-law as an accomplice. That's not a lapse in judgment. That's a crime. Silence. Then you've known for 6 weeks and said nothing. I was gathering evidence. You were building a trap. I was protecting myself by destroying your wife. My mother's voice sharpened. Marcus, I know you're hurt. I know what she did was wrong, but divorce, criminal charges, this scorched earth approach, it's not like you. Maybe you don't know me as well as you think. I know you well enough to know that this isn't about justice, it's about pride. She made you feel stupid, so now you're going to make her pay. The accuracy of the statement landed like a physical blow. I gripped the balcony railing, the metal cold under my palms. What would you have me do? Take her back? Pretend it didn't happen? I'd have you talk to her like an adult instead of ambushing her with lawyers and frozen bank accounts. I'd have you remember that you loved this woman enough to marry her. That love doesn't just evaporate because she made a terrible mistake. She called me stupid, Mom. Too trusting, easy to manipulate. She laughed about it. I have recordings. Of course you do. A sigh heavy with disappointment. Your father would be ashamed. That stopped me. My father had died when I was 23. Before the company, before the money, before any of this. He'd been a high school math teacher, a man who believed in hard work and integrity and treating people with dignity, even when they didn't deserve it. Dad would have told me to protect what's mine, I said quietly. Your father would have told you that vengeance makes you just as small as the person who wronged you. A pause. I raised you better than this, Marcus. Whatever you do today, make sure it's something you can live with tomorrow. She hung up before I could respond. I stood there on the balcony for another 10 minutes, watching the city wake up, my mother's words echoing in my head. Vengeance makes you just as small. But what was the alternative? Forgiveness. Moving on. Acting like the past 6 weeks, 6 weeks of lies and surveillance and late-night planning had been for nothing. At 6:45 a.m., I showered and dressed with the same mechanical precision I'd used for any other business meeting. Charcoal suit, white shirt, deep blue tie. The uniform of control, of power, of a man who had his life together, even when it was falling spectacularly apart. David was waiting downstairs at 7:15 a.m., earlier than usual.
Big day, sir.
You could say that. Mrs. Chen called me last night, asked if I'd drive her to the meeting today. I looked up sharply. What did you tell her? That I work for you, not her? He met my eyes in the rearview mirror, but she sounded pretty desperate. If you don't mind me saying. Noted. We drove through morning traffic in silence until David cleared his throat. Sir, I know it's not my place. Then don't. But I've been driving you both for 4 years now. I've seen you two together happy, really happy. Whatever's happening today, just make sure it's what you really want. Everyone's suddenly an expert on what I want. Not an expert, just someone who's watched you become someone different over the past few months. Harder, colder. He paused. Lonier. I didn't respond because he was right. I had become harder, colder. The man who trusted easily, who'd believed in the best in people, who thought love was enough. That man had died the night I found the Cartier receipt. What remained was someone more cynical, more guarded, more willing to hurt before being hurt. The question was whether that transformation was permanent or just a scar that would fade with time. We pulled up to my office building at 7:43 a.m. I had 6 hours until the meeting. 6 hours to work to distract myself to avoid thinking about what was coming. Jennifer was already at her desk. Despite my telling her to take the day off, "You're supposed to be on vacation," I said. "And you're supposed to be preparing for the most important meeting of your life. Figured you might need support." She handed me a coffee. "Also, your wife called 4 times. She's downstairs in the lobby." "What?" "Security called 10 minutes ago. She's been there since 7:30 asking to come up. They're waiting for authorization." I walked to the window and looked down. 42 floors below. I could just make out a figure pacing near the entrance. Sarah, wearing the navy dress she knew was my favorite. Her hair pulled back the way she used to wear it on date nights. She was staging a performance, and the audience was me. "Tell security she's not authorized." "Marcus, tell them, Jen." She picked up the phone, spoke quietly, hung up. "They're asking her to leave. She says she'll wait outside. Let her." I retreated to my office and tried to work, but concentration was impossible. Every few minutes I'd find myself at the window looking down at Sarah's small figure on the sidewalk. She stayed there for 2 hours, pacing, sitting on the bench, checking her phone. At one point, she looked up toward my office. She couldn't possibly see me from that distance, but it felt like our eyes met across 42 floors and a chasm of broken trust. At 10:17 a.m., she finally left. The GPS tracker showed her heading to a coffee shop 3 blocks away, then to Central Park, then back toward Midtown, circling, restless, a shark that had to keep moving or drown. At 11:30 a.m., Catherine knocked on my door. "Meeting in 30 minutes, Morrison's office. You ready?" "As ready as I'll ever be." She sat down across from me, studying my face with the analytical precision that made her such a good CFO. "You look like hell." "I feel like hell." "Good. That means you're still human." She leaned forward. "Last chance, Marcus. You can still call this off. Sit down with Sarah. Actually, talk to her. Maybe find a way through this that doesn't involve mutually assured destruction." She stole from me, Catherine. I know. She mocked me, called me stupid. I know. She planned it for months, executed it perfectly. Would have gotten away with it if I hadn't been 3 steps ahead. I know all of that. Catherine's voice was gentle, but I also know you loved her. Maybe still love her. And I know that what you're about to do is going to hurt you just as much as it hurts her. So what? I should just let it go, forgive and forget? I'm saying there's a middle ground between doormat and demolition. You're a smart man, Marcus. Surely you can find it. I turned back to the window. The city stretched out below, indifferent to my crisis, to Sarah's tears, to the small human drama playing out in expensive offices with expensive lawyers. Somewhere down there, people were getting married, getting divorced, falling in love, falling apart. The same cycles repeating endlessly. And here I was thinking my particular heartbreak was somehow special. What would you do? I asked. If you were me? Catherine was quiet for a long moment. Honestly, I don't know. I'd probably want to burn everything down too. But I also know that when the ashes settle, you're the one who has to live in them. At 11:58 a.m., I left for Morrison's office. The meeting was at 2 p.m., but I wanted time to review the documents, to steel myself, to prepare for whatever version of Sarah was going to walk through that door. James Morrison greeted me in his conference room, papers already spread across the mahogany table like a battlefield ready for war. Everything's in order, he said. Option 1, cooperative divorce. She signs, returns the money, agrees to NDA, walks away clean. Option 2, we file criminal charges and pursue full prosecution. Her choice. And if she fights, then we show her what fighting looks like. He tapped a thick folder marked Evidence Complete. Audio, video, financial records, witness statements. It's airtight, Marcus. She can't win, but she might try. People do stupid things when they're desperate. He checked his watch. She'll be here in 90 minutes. You sure you want to be in the room? This is going to get emotional. I need to see it through. Masochism or closure? Doesn't matter. At 1:47 p.m., my phone buzzed. I'm downstairs coming up early. Please don't shut me out. Please let me explain before the lawyers take over. I showed the message to James. Your call, he said, though I strongly advise against it. I stood and walked to the window, looking down at Rockefeller Center, at the ice skaters and tourists and people living their uncomplicated lives. Somewhere in this building, Sarah was in an elevator, rising toward this floor, toward this moment, probably rehearsing what she'd say, how she'd plead her case. Send her in when she arrives, I said. Give us 10 minutes alone before you join. Marcus, 10 minutes, James. I owe her that much. He nodded reluctantly and left to brief his receptionist. I sat down at the head of the conference table and waited, each second stretching into eternity. At 1:51 p.m., I heard voices in the hallway. James, calm and professional. Sarah, higher-pitched, nervous. Then footsteps approaching. The door opened. Sarah stood in the doorway, and for a moment we just looked at each other across the expensive carpet and the carefully arranged documents and the 5 years of marriage that had led us to this room. She looked terrible. Beautiful still. She'd always be beautiful, but terrible. Eyes red and swollen, makeup imperfect, the navy dress wrinkled like she'd slept in it or not slept at all. Hi, she said softly. Hi. Can I sit? I gestured to the chair across from me. She sat, hands folded in her lap, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Thank you for seeing me, she began. I know you don't owe me anything. No, I don't. But I needed to say this to your face, not through lawyers. She took a shaky breath. I'm sorry, Marcus. I'm so sorry. What I did was unforgivable. I know that. I'm not here to make excuses or ask for forgiveness. I just needed you to hear me say it, to know that I understand what I threw away. Do you? I leaned forward. Do you understand that I heard every word you said Monday night? Every laugh, every joke about how stupid I was, every plan you made to spend my money while mocking me for not noticing? Tears spilled down her cheeks. I was performing for Melissa, trying to sound confident when inside I was dying. Don't lie to me. Not now. You've done enough of that.
I'm not lying.
Her voice broke.
Yes, I took the money. Yes, I said terrible things, but Marcus, I was spiraling.
After my dad died, after I lost my job, I felt like I was drowning. And you were so busy with the company, and I wanted to feel like I had some control, some power. So you stole from me. So I made the worst mistake of my life. She reached across the table, but I pulled back before she could touch me. I know you've been planning this. The messages, the account freezes, all of it. You've been punishing me for weeks. I've been protecting myself by torturing me, by making me think I was losing my mind. Sane by documenting your crimes. I kept my voice level, cold. Everything you did is evidence, Sarah, admissible in court. If I wanted to, I could have you arrested right now. She paused. You wouldn't. Why not? You stole $170,000. That's grand larceny, wire fraud, conspiracy, federal crimes. Because you loved me once. Because we built a life together. Because somewhere under this rage and hurt, the man I married still exists. The woman I married never existed. She was just a character you played. That's not true. Then who are you really, Sarah? The woman who promised to stand by me, or the woman who saw me as an ATM with a heartbeat? She flinched like I'd struck her. Both. Neither. I don't know anymore. She wiped her eyes. I know you won't believe this, but I do love you. I've always loved you. I just got lost somewhere. Started measuring my worth by what I could buy, what I could show off to my friends, what Melissa had that I didn't. It was sick and wrong, and I hate myself for it. Not enough to stop. No, she admitted quietly. Not enough to stop. Not until you made me. The door opened. James Morrison stepped in right on schedule. I'm sorry to interrupt, he said, though clearly he wasn't. But we have a lot to cover, and I have another appointment at 4. Sarah looked at me desperately. Marcus, please don't do this. We can go to therapy. I'll get help. I'll do anything. Sign the papers, Sarah. James slid the documents across the table. The cooperative divorce agreement. Everything laid out in legal language. Division of assets, return of stolen funds, non-disclosure agreement, mutual release of claims. She stared at the papers like they might bite her. And if I don't sign, James opened the second folder, the one marked criminal charges. Then we proceed with prosecution. The evidence is overwhelming. You'd likely serve 3 to 5 years in federal prison. Your sister would face similar charges as an accomplice. You do that to me? To Melissa? I met her eyes across the table, and something inside me cracked just slightly. This was it. The moment of choice. Destroy her completely, or let her walk away wounded, but free. My mother's voice echoed. Make sure it's something you can live with tomorrow. Catherine's warning. When the ashes settle, you're the one who has to live in them. David's observation. Just make sure it's what you really want. I looked at Sarah, really looked at her, and saw not a criminal or a villain, but a broken woman who'd made catastrophic choices and now understood the weight of consequences. Sign the papers, I said again, but gentler this time. Return the money, walk away. Start over somewhere else. Be better than you were here. And us? There is no us. There hasn't been for a long time. We were just too proud or too scared to admit it. She picked up the pen with a trembling hand, and for a moment I thought she might refuse, might fight, might force me to follow through on the threats and live with the aftermath. Instead, she signed each page, each clause, each formal ending of our marriage. When it was done, she stood slowly gathering her purse. For what it's worth, she said, You deserved better than me. Yeah, I said I did.
She walked to the door, paused, looked back one final time.
I hope you find someone who sees you the way I should have seen you. Someone who would never dream of hurting you. Then she was gone. The door closed. James began gathering the documents. That went better than expected. She could have fought, made it ugly. It was already ugly. I sat there in the empty conference room surrounded by papers that legally ended my marriage and waited to feel something. Relief, vindication, satisfaction. Instead, I just felt tired and alone. The apartment felt like a museum when I returned that evening. Every object, a relic of a marriage that no longer existed. Every photograph, a lie I'd been telling myself. Every carefully chosen piece of furniture, a monument to wasted time and misplaced trust. I stood in the entryway for a full 5 minutes, briefcase still in hand, unable to move forward into the space that was now solely mine. The silence was oppressive. Not the comfortable quiet of solitude, but the hollow echo of absence. Sarah's keys sat on the entry table where she'd left them before the meeting, a symbolic surrender. Next to them, a handwritten note on the expensive stationery we'd ordered together for thank you cards we'd never gotten around to sending. I've taken only what I came with. Everything else is yours. It always was. I'm sorry doesn't begin to cover it, but it's all I have left to give. I crumpled the note and dropped it in the trash, then retrieved it a moment later, smoothing it out on the counter. Evidence of what? I wasn't sure. Maybe just proof that this had really happened, that I hadn't imagined the whole thing. My phone buzzed. How did it go? It's done. She signed everything. How are you holding up? End quote. Me? I'm fine. That's what you always say right before. You're not fine. I set the phone down without responding and walked through the apartment room by room, cataloging what remained. Sarah had been true to her word. She'd taken almost nothing. Her clothes were gone from the closet, her toiletries from the bathroom, the small personal items that had marked her presence, but everything else remained. The art we'd bought together, the furniture she'd insisted on, the expensive kitchen gadgets she'd never used but insisted we needed. In the guest bedroom where she'd been sleeping, the bed was made with military precision. The only sign she'd been there at all was a water ring on the nightstand and a bobby pin under the bed. I sat on the edge of the mattress and realized I was holding my breath, waiting for something, for her to come back, for this to not be real for the past 6 weeks, to rewind so I could make different choices. But time only moved in one direction, and I'd chosen mine. At 7:43 p.m., there was a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone, and for one irrational moment, I thought it might be Sarah, having changed her mind, ready to fight for us. After all, it was my mother. She stood in the hallway holding a casserole dish and wearing an expression I recognized from childhood. The one that said she was disappointed but loved me anyway. "You're not eating," she said, pushing past me into the apartment. "And you look like you haven't slept in a week." "Mom, I'm fine. Stop saying you're fine when you're clearly not." She headed to the kitchen and started unpacking food. Chicken soup, your father's recipe. You need comfort food, and I need to make sure my son hasn't completely lost his mind. I leaned against the counter and watched her move through my kitchen with the ease of someone who'd raised me to believe that food could solve most problems. It couldn't, obviously, but the familiar ritual was oddly soothing. "The meeting happened," I said. She signed. "It's over." "And how do you feel?" "Like I did what needed to be done." My mother stopped stirring and turned to face me. "That's not what I asked. I asked how you feel, not how you've rationalized it." I opened my mouth to respond, but nothing came out. How did I feel? Triumphant, vindicated, devastated. Some toxic combination of all three? "I feel empty," I admitted finally, like I won a war, but lost everything worth fighting for in the process. She nodded, ladling soup into a bowl and sliding it across the counter. Eat. I ate mechanically, tasting nothing while she sat across from me in silence. My mother had always been comfortable with quiet, a useful skill when raising a son who processed emotions through spreadsheets and logical frameworks rather than conversations. "Your father and I almost divorced once," she said suddenly. I looked up, shocked. "What?" "You were 5, too young to remember. He'd made some investments without telling me, lost a significant amount of our savings. I found out when the bank called about an overdraft." She smiled sadly. I was furious, felt betrayed. He lied to me, risked our financial security, and then tried to hide it when things went wrong. I never knew that. We didn't talk about it. I moved into the guest room for 3 months, saw a lawyer, had papers drawn up. She traced the rim of her coffee cup. I was ready to end it, to punish him for making me feel stupid and powerless. What changed? I asked myself what I really wanted. Did I want revenge, justice, or did I want my marriage back? She met my eyes. Those turned out to be different things. Sarah didn't just risk our money, Mom. She stole it, planned it, laughed about it. I know. And what she did was worse than what your father did. But Marcus, you need to be honest with yourself about what you wanted from today. Was it protection or punishment? I pushed the soup bowl away, suddenly nauseous. Does it matter? It matters if you wake up tomorrow and realize you burned down your life just to watch her suffer. She deserved to suffer. Maybe. Probably. But does that make you feel better? She reached across and took my hand. Baby, I'm not saying you should have forgiven her. I'm not even saying you made the wrong choice. I'm just asking if it was the choice that serves who you want to be. I pulled my hand away and stood, pacing to the window. The city glittered below, indifferent and eternal. Who I want to be. I wanted to be a man who trusted his wife, who built something real with someone he loved. But I can't be that person anymore because she made it impossible. So who are you now? I don't know. The admission felt like defeat. Someone harder. Someone who doesn't make the same mistake twice. Or someone so afraid of being hurt again that he'll never let anyone close enough to matter. She stood and came to stand beside me. That's not strength, Marcus. That's just loneliness wearing armor. We stood there in silence, watching the city breathe. After a while, my mother kissed my cheek and gathered her things. I'll leave the rest of the soup in the fridge. Heat it for 2 minutes, stir, then another minute. And Marcus, call your therapist. You need to talk to someone who isn't your mother or your lawyer. After she left, I sat on the couch and pulled out my phone, scrolling through 5 years of photos. Sarah and me at our wedding, deliriously happy. Sarah and me in Paris, laughing at some joke I couldn't remember. Sarah and me at last year's Christmas party, her head on my shoulder, my arm around her waist. Had those moments been real, or had she been performing even then, playing the role of devoted wife while already planning her exit strategy? At 9:17 p.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mr. Chen, a woman's voice, professional but warm. This is Dr. Rachel Kim from Manhattan Psychiatric Associates. Sarah Chen listed you as an emergency contact. She was admitted to our facility this evening following a crisis evaluation. My heart stopped.
What happened? Is she okay?
She's stable now. She came to our emergency department expressing suicidal ideation. We're keeping her for observation, likely 72 hours minimum. A pause. She's asking for you. You're not obligated to come, of course, but I'll be there in 20 minutes. I don't remember the drive. David materialized somehow. Maybe I called him. Maybe he was psychic. And we cut through evening traffic while my mind raced through worst-case scenarios. Sarah hurt. Sarah dead. Sarah having done something permanent because I'd been so focused on punishment that I'd failed to see how close to the edge she was. Manhattan Psychiatric Associates occupied the top 3 floors of a medical building on the Upper East Side. The psychiatric emergency room was nothing like the sterile chaos of a regular ER. It was quiet, dimly lit, designed to be calming. A nurse led me through secure doors to a private consultation room. "She's in observation room 3, the nurse explained. "Doctor, Kim will brief you before you see her, if you'd like, please." Dr. Kim appeared a few minutes later, late 40s, kind eyes, the air of someone who'd seen it all and still maintained compassion. We shook hands and she gestured for me to sit. "Your wife came in around 7:30 p.m. A friend brought her after Sarah called, expressing intent to harm herself. She was evaluated by our crisis team and admitted voluntarily." Dr. Kim pulled up a chart on her tablet. "She's been cooperative. No active psychosis, but significant depression and anxiety." She told us about the divorce, the circumstances leading to it. She takes full responsibility but seems overwhelmed by guilt and shame. "Can I see her in a moment?" "But Mr. Chen, I need to ask, are you here as support or as someone who might escalate her distress?" The question stung, but it was fair. "I don't know," I admitted this morning. "I wanted nothing to do with her. Now I'm terrified she might hurt herself because of what I did." "What she did," Dr. Kim corrected gently. "Sarah made choices that led to consequences. You're not responsible for her mental health crisis, though I understand why you feel that way." She studied me. "That said, if seeing you will make things worse, I need to know. I think she needs to know someone still cares what happens to her, even if that someone is me." Dr. Kim nodded and stood. 15 minutes. If she becomes agitated or more distressed, we'll end the visit. Understood?" "Understood." The observation room was small and deliberately non-threatening. Soft lighting, comfortable chairs, walls painted in soothing blues. Sarah sat on the bed wearing hospital scrubs, her hair loose around her shoulders, looking younger and more vulnerable than I'd ever seen her. She looked up when I entered and her face crumpled. "You came?" "Of course I came." I sat in the chair across from the bed, maintaining distance. "What happened, Sarah?" "I signed the papers, went to Melissa's. She was packing for Miami. Did you know she was running away?" A bitter laugh. "Of course you knew. You know everything. Anyway, she didn't want to deal with me, said I'd made my bed and now I had to lie in it. So I left, started walking, ended up at the Brooklyn Bridge. My blood ran cold, Sarah. I didn't jump, obviously, but I stood there for a long time thinking about it. Thinking about how much easier it would be to just stop. Stop feeling guilty. Stop being the person who destroyed her marriage for money. Stop being me. She wiped her eyes. Then I thought about you finding out, about you having to live with that. And I realized that even though I'd hurt you terribly, I didn't want to hurt you that way too. So you came here. So I called Melissa back, told her I was going to jump. She freaked out, called 911, and somehow found me before I did anything stupid, or more stupid than I've already been. She looked at me directly. Why did you come, Marcus? After everything, why are you here? Good question. Why was I here this morning? I'd wanted her out of my life forever. Now, I was sitting in a psychiatric facility at 10 p.m. because the thought of her hurting herself made me physically ill, because despite everything, I don't want you dead, I said quietly. I wanted you gone. I wanted you to feel consequences. I wanted you to understand what you'd done. But I never wanted this. Didn't you? Even a little bit? Her voice was soft, not accusatory. I hurt you so badly. Wouldn't it be easier if I just disappeared? No. The word came out fierce, surprising us both. No, it wouldn't, Sarah. You broke my heart and my trust. You made me question everything I thought I knew about us. But that doesn't mean I want you dead. That's not who I am, even on my worst day." She started crying in earnest, then deep, wrenching sobs that shook her whole body. I stood and moved to sit on the edge of the bed, not touching her, but close enough that she knew I was there.
"I'm so sorry," she gasped. "I'm so sorry. Not just for the money, for all of it. For taking your trust and treating it like it was worthless. For making you feel stupid when you're the smartest, kindest person I've ever known. For throwing away something real because I was too broken to appreciate what I had. I know you're sorry. Do you? Or do you think I'm just sorry I got caught?"
I thought about that. About the recordings I'd made, the surveillance I'd conducted, the elaborate trap I'd built, about how I'd assumed the worst of her at every turn, never giving her the benefit of the doubt, never allowing for the possibility that her remorse might be genuine. "I think you're sorry now," I said carefully. "Whether you would have been sorry if I hadn't caught you, I don't know, and I'm not sure it matters anymore. It matters to me. I need you to know that somewhere in the middle of all this, I woke up. I realized what I'd done, what I'd become, and I hated myself for it." She looked at me with red, swollen eyes. "That's why I couldn't sleep, why I moved to the guest room. I couldn't lie next to you knowing what I'd done, knowing who I'd turned into. You could have told me, confessed, given the money back. I should have. I wanted to, but I was terrified. Terrified of losing you, losing our life, losing everything." She laughed weakly. "Turns out I lost it all anyway." We sat in silence for a while, the only sound her occasional sniffles and the distant hum of medical equipment. "What happens now?" she asked finally. "You stay here, get help, figure out why you did what you did and how to never do it again." I stood, needing distance again. "The divorce stands, the consequences stand, but Sarah, you need to get healthy for yourself, not for me and us." "Is there any possibility?" "No." I said it gently but firmly. There's no us anymore. Too much has happened. Too much trust has been broken. But that doesn't mean I want you to suffer forever. It just means we can't be together. She nodded, accepting what she already knew. "Will you? Would you be willing to talk after I get out? Not about getting back together, just I'd like to understand how I didn't see who you really were, how I mistook your trust for stupidity. Maybe someday, when we've both had time to heal." A nurse knocked softly and entered. "I'm sorry, Mr. Chen, but visiting hours are over." I stood to leave, then paused at the door. "Sarah, get better. Be better. And please, please, don't hurt yourself. You made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but you're not beyond redemption. Even after everything I did to you, you still care." It wasn't a question. "Even after everything," I confirmed. "I'm not sure what that says about me. It says you're a better person than I deserved." I left her there alone in the observation room and walked out into the night, feeling more confused than I had when I walked in. This morning, everything had been clear. She was the villain. I was the victim. Justice had been served. Now, nothing felt clear at all. David drove me home in silence, intuitive enough not to ask questions. When we pulled up to my building, he simply said, "Take care of yourself, sir. This isn't over just because the papers are signed." In the apartment, I poured another scotch and returned to the window, my usual perch for processing the unprocessable. My phone buzzed with messages I didn't read, calls I didn't answer. The only person I wanted to talk to was the one person I couldn't, my father, who would have known what to say, how to make sense of this tangle of anger and grief and guilt. Instead, I pulled up his last voicemail, saved for 8 years, a message he'd left the day before he died, just checking in, saying he loved me, saying he was proud of the man I'd become. You've always had a good heart, Marcus. Don't let the world make you hard. Stay kind, even when it costs you. I listened to it 3 times, then finally let myself cry for my marriage, for my father, for the man I'd been 6 weeks ago who still believed in happy endings. Tomorrow I'd go back to being the CEO, the strategist, the man who had everything under control. Tonight, I could just be broken. 3 days later, I still hadn't returned to work. Catherine had been calling twice daily. Each message a variation of, "Take all the time you need," layered with the subtext of, "The Singapore office is on fire and we need you." I'd responded to emails from bed, approved emergency budgets via text, and joined exactly 1 video call where I looked so terrible that my CTO asked if I had the flu. I'd lied and said yes. The truth was harder to explain. I was having some kind of delayed breakdown. The emotional bill for 6 weeks of compartmentalization coming due all at once. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep more than 2 hours at a stretch, spent most of my time staring at the ceiling or pacing the apartment like a ghost haunting his own life. Dr. Kim had called twice with updates on Sarah. She was stable, participating in group therapy, meeting with a psychiatrist, making progress. Each update felt like a small weightlifting, followed immediately by a heavier one settling in its place. Relief that she was okay, guilt that I'd contributed to putting her there, anger that I felt guilty at all. On the 4th morning, I forced myself to shower and dress. The reflection in the mirror showed a stranger, hollow-eyed, unshaven, wearing the expression of someone who'd won a Pyrrhic victory and was only now tallying the cost. My phone rang. Not Catherine this time. Melissa. I almost didn't answer, but morbid curiosity won out. "What do you want to tell you that you're a monster?" Her voice was venomous. "Sarah's in a psychiatric hospital because of you. Because you systematically destroyed her instead of just divorcing her like a normal person. Sarah's in a psychiatric hospital because she stole $170,000 and couldn't handle the consequences. You entrapped her. You set her up, recorded her, played mind games. I documented a crime that was already in progress. There's a difference. She loved you. She loved my money. There's a difference with that too." I paced to the window, my usual thinking spot. "Why are you calling Melissa? To make me feel guilty? Congratulations, you've succeeded. To threaten me, your lawyers can talk to my lawyers. To apologize for your role in this because that's the only conversation I'm interested in having." Silence on the other end, then quieter. "I'm sorry. I hadn't expected that." "What?" "I'm sorry for my part in it, for pushing Sarah, for taking the money." A shaky breath. "I was jealous of what she had, of you, your life, your success. She was my little sister, and she got everything handed to her. The rich husband, the penthouse, the perfect life, and I was struggling with 2 jobs and student loans and a shitty apartment in Queens. So you decided to rob me? So I decided we deserved some of it. That you had so much you wouldn't even notice. That it was basically victimless because what's $170,000 to someone worth $300 million? She laughed bitterly. Turns out it wasn't about the money at all. It was about the principle, about trust, about Sarah choosing me over you and finding out that choice had consequences. I sat down heavily on the couch. This conversation was going in directions I hadn't anticipated. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because Sarah asked me to call you to apologize and to ask if you'd be willing to visit her. She has something she wants to say. She can say it over the phone. She wants to say it in person. Needs to. Actually, her therapist thinks it's part of her recovery, making direct amends to the people she hurt. I'm not interested in being part of Sarah's therapy." "Marcus, please. I know you hate her. I know you hate me, but she's trying to get better, to take real accountability. The least you can do is hear her out." "The least I can do is nothing, which is what I plan to do." "Then you're just as bad as she is. The accusation hit harder than it should have. Explain that logic. She hurt you financially and emotionally. You had every right to be angry, to divorce her, to demand the money back, but you went further. You tortured her, made her paranoid and scared, set elaborate traps just to watch her squirm. That's not justice, Marcus. That's cruelty. She called me stupid, too trusting, easy to manipulate. I know. She told me everything she said, every terrible thing, and she knows it was unforgivable. But can you honestly say your response was proportional? That you didn't take some dark pleasure in making her suffer? I wanted to argue, to defend my actions as reasonable, necessary, justified. But Catherine's words echoed. Strategy without emotion is just revenge wearing a suit. And my mother's. Make sure it's something you can live with tomorrow. When? I asked quietly. When? What? When does she want to see me? Melissa exhaled, surprised. Today? This afternoon? Visiting hours are 2 to 4. Fine. I'll be there at 2 o'clock. Thank you, Marcus. Really? This means I hung up before she could finish. At 1:47 p.m., I stood outside Manhattan Psychiatric Associates, debating whether to go through with this. Part of me wanted to turn around to maintain the walls I'd built, to keep Sarah at a distance where she couldn't hurt me anymore. But another part, the part that sounded disturbingly like my father, knew that Melissa was right. I had gone too far, crossed lines that couldn't be uncrossed. The question was whether I could live with that. Inside, the nurse from before recognized me and led me to a different room. This time, a family consultation space with actual furniture instead of hospital fixtures. Sarah was already there, sitting in an armchair by the window, wearing civilian clothes. She looked better, healthier. The manic edge of desperation had been replaced by something calmer, but sadder. "Hi," she said as I entered. "Hi." We sat across from each other, the coffee table between us, feeling like both too much distance and not enough. "Thank you for coming," Sarah began. "I know you didn't have to." Melissa was persuasive. "She feels terrible. We both do." She folded her hands in her lap, a gesture I recognized from 1,000 other serious conversations. "My therapist has been helping me understand why I did what I did. Not excuses, just reasons, patterns." I'm listening. I grew up watching my parents fight about money constantly. Dad worked himself to death trying to provide. Mom spent beyond their means trying to keep up with her friends. It was this toxic cycle where money equaled love and security and worth. If you had it, you mattered. If you didn't, you were less than. She paused. "When I met you, you had so much. More than I'd ever imagined. And at first, I loved you for you. But over time, the money became consuming. I started measuring my worth by what I could spend, what I could show off, what lifestyle I could maintain. So you stole because you were insecure. I stole because I'd built my entire identity on external validation. And when my dad died and I lost my job, I felt like I was disappearing. Like without accomplishments or income or something to prove I mattered, I was nobody." She met my eyes. Taking the money wasn't about the money. It was about feeling powerful when I felt completely powerless. That's a very therapeutic way of saying you committed fraud. I know. And I'm not asking you to forgive me or understand or anything like that. I just wanted you to know that it was never about you being stupid or easy to manipulate. You weren't the victim of my master plan. You were the casualty of my unraveling. I leaned back, processing. You know what the worst part was? Not the money, not even the theft. It was hearing you laugh about it, hearing you mock me to Melissa. That's when I can't get past. I know. Her voice cracked. I was performing toughness, pretending I was in control when inside I was terrified. Melissa had doubts and I needed her to go through with it. So I played the confident villain. I said horrible things to convince her and myself that I had power in a situation where I actually had none. You did have power, Sarah. You chose this every step of the way. You made choices. You're right. I did. And I'm not trying to diminish that or shift blame. I just want you to understand that the person you heard on those recordings wasn't the real me. Or maybe it was a part of me I hate and I'm trying to kill. I don't know anymore. We sat in silence for a while. Outside the window, the city continued its indifferent existence. Cars honking, people walking, the world spinning on. Why did you really ask me here? I asked finally, to apologize genuinely and completely, to let you see that I'm getting help and to tell you something I should have said weeks ago. She took a deep breath. You were right to do what you did. I blinked, surprised. What? The surveillance, the documentation, the trap. You were right. I was spiraling and I needed consequences severe enough to make me stop. If you just divorced me quietly, I would have learned nothing, felt justified, even blamed you for not being attentive enough or generous enough. But you made me face exactly what I'd done, made me see myself clearly. And yes, it broke me. But maybe I needed to break to rebuild into something better. Sarah, you tried to kill yourself. I had a breakdown, a necessary one. Apparently, my therapist says I've been avoiding real emotional processing for years, using spending and status as coping mechanisms. You forcing consequences didn't cause my breakdown. It just accelerated what was already coming. She smiled sadly. In a weird way, you probably saved my life. If I'd kept going down that path, who knows what would have happened? I didn't know what to say to that. I'd spent days wrestling with guilt over her hospitalization, and here she was, thanking me for it. I'm not asking you to feel good about what happened, she continued. I just don't want you carrying guilt that isn't yours. I made choices. You responded. Both things can be true. Your therapist is good. She's expensive. Ironically, I can't afford her now that I don't have access to your money. A bitter laugh. I'm moving back in with my mom, starting over, getting a job, a real one this time, building a life that's mine instead of a reflection of someone else's success. That sounds healthy. It sounds terrifying, but healthy too. Yeah. She stood and walked to the window. Can I ask you something? Depends what it is. Do you think you'll ever trust anyone again after this? The question lodged in my chest like a knife. I don't know. I hope so. But right now, the idea of being vulnerable with someone, of believing what they say, of not constantly checking and verifying and looking for the trap, it seems impossible. I did that to you. Turned you into someone who sees threats everywhere. You contributed, but I chose how to respond. Catherine said something about revenge, making me as small as the person who wronged me. I think she was right. Catherine's smart. She is. She also said I needed to decide what kind of person I want to be going forward. Someone defined by what was done to me, or someone who chooses differently despite it. Sarah turned from the window. What did you decide? I haven't yet, but I think I need to forgive you. Not for your sake, but for mine. Because carrying this anger and hurt and need for vengeance, it's exhausting. It's turning me into someone I don't like. You're allowed to be angry, Marcus. You're allowed to hate me. I know, but I'm tired of feeling this way. Tired of replaying those recordings in my head. Tired of seeing betrayal everywhere. Tired of being alone in that apartment, surrounded by reminders of what I lost. I stood and moved to stand beside her at the window. I'm not saying I forgive you right now, today. But I think I could get there given time and distance and a lot of therapy of my own. You're going to see someone? My mother suggested it strongly. In that way, mothers do, where it's technically a suggestion, but actually a command. Sarah smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from her in months. I always liked your mother. She liked you too. Still does, actually, which I find incomprehensible. She sees people as more than their worst moments. It's a gift or a liability, both, probably. We stood there, two people who'd promised forever and delivered approximately 5 years, looking out at a city full of people making and breaking similar promises. I should go, I said finally. This was helpful. Harder than I expected, but helpful. Will you come back? Not right away, but eventually. It would help my recovery to make proper amends over time, not just in one conversation. I considered it. Every instinct screamed to cut ties completely, to never see her again, to let the lawyers handle everything remaining. But that small voice that sounded like my father whispered about grace, about healing, about being bigger than your hurt. Maybe, I said. Let's start with maybe. I'll take it. She walked me to the door, and for a moment we stood there awkwardly, neither knowing how to say goodbye. Finally, Sarah extended her hand. A handshake. Formal. Final. I took it. Be well, Marcus. I mean that. You too, Sarah. Really? Outside, the December air was sharp and clean. David was waiting by the car as always, somehow knowing exactly when I'd emerge. Home, sir? No. Office. Time to stop hiding. Good choice. We drove through afternoon traffic while I stared out the window, thinking about forgiveness and consequences, and whether it was possible to hold both simultaneously. Sarah had hurt me. I'd hurt her back. Neither of those things canceled out the other. We just created a closed loop of pain that had to end somewhere. Maybe this was the ending. Not tidy or satisfying, but real. My phone buzzed. Please tell me you're coming back to work before the company implodes. On my way now. What's the damage? Where do I start? Singapore's been handled, but Tokyo's melting down. Also, we have a board meeting tomorrow that you really can't miss. I'll be there. And Catherine, thank you for not giving up on me. That's what friends are for. Also, you pay me extremely well. Me, mercenary, proud of it. The office building loomed ahead, all glass and steel, and testament to what I'd built when I still believed in things. The elevator ride to 42 felt longer than usual. Or maybe I was just dreading stepping back into the life I'd been hiding from. Jennifer nearly cried when she saw me. Boss, oh thank God. I was starting to think you'd quit and hadn't told anyone. Takes more than a divorce to get rid of me. Good, because your inbox is terrifying and Singapore keeps calling. And she stopped really looking at me. Are you okay? Like actually okay getting there one day at a time. That's all any of us can do. In my office, I stood at the window, my perpetual thinking spot, and looked out at the city that had witnessed my rise, my marriage, my betrayal, my breakdown. Somewhere out there, Sarah was in a hospital room learning to rebuild herself. Melissa was packing for Miami, running from consequences. My mother was probably lighting candles and praying I'd find peace. And me? I was standing in my corner office, surrounded by the trappings of success that suddenly felt hollow, wondering what came next. The answer, as usual, was work. I opened my laptop and dove into emails, into problems I could solve with logic and strategy, and none of the messy emotions that came with human relationships. This was safe. This was controllable. This was lonely. But loneliness was familiar. Now I could work with familiar. Tomorrow I'd think about therapy, about healing, about building a life that wasn't defined by what I'd lost. Today, I'd just survive one email at a time. 2 weeks passed in a blur of work and therapy sessions. Dr. Amanda Foster came highly recommended by Catherine, who'd been seeing her for years to manage the stress of being CFO at a high-growth tech company. "She doesn't do," Catherine had said, "and she'll call you on yours, which is exactly what you need."
She was right. Our first session had been excruciating. Dr. Foster, mid-50s, sharp eyes, zero tolerance for deflection, had listened to my carefully prepared summary of events, then said, "That's a very clinical recitation of what happened. Now tell me how you actually feel about it." I just did. "No, you told me the facts. Facts are easy. Feelings are hard. Try again." It had taken 40 minutes and several false starts before I'd finally cracked open enough to admit the truth. I was furious at Sarah, furious at myself for not seeing it sooner, terrified that I'd never trust anyone again, and consumed by guilt over the elaborate psychological warfare I'd waged. "Good," Dr. Foster had said. "That's a starting point. Now we can actually work." By the third session, we'd moved past the events themselves and into the patterns. My tendency to intellectualize emotions, my need for control, my deep-seated belief that love was transactional, that I had to earn it through success, through providing, through being useful. Where did that come from? Dr. Foster asked during our session the day before Christmas Eve. I'd been staring out her office window. Apparently, I had a type when it came to thinking spots. My father worked himself to death, literally, heart attack at 62. He was a teacher, made decent money, but it was never enough for my mother's family. They looked down on him, called him unambitious. So he took on tutoring jobs, summer teaching positions, grading papers until midnight, trying to prove he was worthy. And you internalize that message. I internalized that love comes with conditions, that people will only stay if you're valuable enough, successful enough, useful enough. I turned from the window. Sarah leaving seemed to confirm it. The moment I stopped being an ATM, she was gone. Except she didn't leave. You forced her out. She stole from me, yes. And what does that tell you about her? Not about your worth. The distinction had never occurred to me. I'd spent weeks assuming Sarah's betrayal proved something fundamental about my inadequacy. That if I'd been better, somehow more attentive, more present, more whatever, she wouldn't have done it. It tells me she was struggling with her own issues, I said slowly. That her choice to steal wasn't a referendum on my value. It was a symptom of her brokenness. And your choice to respond with systematic psychological warfare was a symptom of mine. Dr. Foster nodded. You're both broken people who hurt each other. The question is, who do you want to be going forward? Someone who perpetuates that cycle or someone who breaks it? I'd left that session with homework. Make a list of things I wanted in my life that had nothing to do with achievement or productivity. Things that brought joy purely for their own sake. The list was embarrassingly short. Work, more work, occasionally reading. That was it. You've optimized yourself for success at the expense of actually living. Dr. Foster had observed when I'd shared my pathetic inventory. No wonder you're miserable. You're functionally a very expensive robot. Now, on Christmas Eve, I sat in my apartment surrounded by evidence of that optimization. The walls were bare except for corporate awards and artsy photographs Sarah had chosen. No family photos, no personal mementos, no signs that a human being with interests and passions lived here. Just surfaces and success. My phone rang. My mother. Merry Christmas Eve, sweetheart. Are you coming tomorrow? I'd been avoiding this conversation. Christmas at my mother's meant extended family questions about Sarah, pitying looks and whispered conversations. It meant being the object of gossip disguised as concern. I don't think so, Mom. I'm not really up for Marcus Chen. You are not spending Christmas alone in that sterile apartment wallowing in self-pity. You'll be here at 2 p.m. tomorrow.
I'm making your father's crown roast. End of discussion. Mom, 2 p.m. Don't make me come get you. She hung up. I smiled despite myself. Some things never changed. At 6 p.m., there was a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone, and for a brief moment my heart rate spiked, some paranoid part of me still waiting for the other shoe to drop, for Sarah to show up with new revelations or demands. It was Catherine, holding 2 bottles of wine and a bag from the Italian place down the street. Intervention, she announced, pushing past me into the apartment. You've been back at work for 2 weeks, but you're still a ghost. So we're having dinner and actual human conversation, whether you like it or not. I could have plans. You don't have plans. You never have plans anymore. She headed to the kitchen and started unpacking food. Besides, it's Christmas Eve. No one should spend it alone eating takeout and brooding. I was planning to brood with wine, actually. Very sophisticated. Even better, I brought superior wine. She pulled out 2 glasses and poured generously. Now sit, eat, and tell me how therapy's going, because you look slightly less dead inside than you did 2 weeks ago. We ate at the counter. The dining table felt too formal, too much like the dinner parties Sarah used to host. Catherine had brought ooh and risotto, and despite my lack of appetite lately, I found myself actually hungry. Dr. Foster says, I've optimized myself into a robot, I said between bites. Dr. Foster is correct. You've been a robot since I've known you. Highly functional, extremely successful, completely disconnected from your own humanity. Tell me how you really feel. I'm serious, Marcus. When's the last time you did something just because it was fun? When's the last time you had a hobby that wasn't work adjacent? I thought about it. I used to play piano before the company took off. Exactly. You used to, past tense. You used to do things that made you happy. Now you just work, achieve, accumulate. It's not sustainable, says the CFO who works 80-hour weeks. I also paint, Catherine countered badly. But I paint, and I go to concerts, and I have a book club, and I have a life outside this company, because I learned early that if you don't build one, you wake up at 50 realizing you've accomplished everything and enjoyed nothing. She wasn't wrong. I poured more wine and leaned back against the counter. Dr. Foster gave me homework. Make a list of things I want in my life that aren't about achievement. And the list was depressing. Work, reading occasionally. That's it. Okay, so we'll build a new list right now. What did you love doing before you became Marcus Chen, tech mogul? I thought back to college, to the years before ambition had consumed everything else. Photography. I used to carry a camera everywhere, loved capturing moments, playing with light. Great. What else? Cooking. Real cooking, not just ordering in. My dad taught me. We used to make dinner together every Sunday. Perfect. Keep going. Hiking. There was this trail near campus I'd go to when I needed to think. I haven't been hiking in probably 10 years. Catherine pulled out her phone and started typing. Photography, cooking, hiking. Good start. Now, what do you want to try that you've never done? I don't know. I haven't thought about it. Think about it now. If success and money and achievement weren't factors, what would you do with your time? The question opened something in my chest, a longing I'd been suppressing for so long I'd forgotten it existed. I'd travel, not for business, just to see things, experience places. I'd go to small towns in Italy and learn to make pasta from grandmothers who've been doing it for 60 years. I'd hike through New Zealand. I'd spend a month in Japan just wandering and taking photos. So do that. I can't just abandon the company. You have a board of directors, a COO, a brilliant CFO. She grinned. You could take a sabbatical 3 months, 6 months. Let other people run things while you remember how to be human. The company needs you to not burn out and die at your desk.
Marcus, you're 41 years old. You have more money than you could spend in 5 lifetimes. You've built something incredible. But what's the point if you never actually live? I stared into my wine glass, watching the light refract through the dark liquid. A sabbatical. The idea was simultaneously terrifying and intoxicating. I wouldn't know what to do with myself. I admitted that's the point. You'd figure it out. And maybe in the process, you'd figure out who Marcus Chen is when he's not being CEO Marcus Chen. We finished dinner and moved to the living room where Catherine sprawled on the couch with her wine while I took my usual spot by the window. "Can I ask you something?" I said. "Shoot." "Did you ever suspect about Sarah?" Catherine was quiet for a long moment.
I suspected she was unhappy, that something was off between you two, but theft? No, I never saw that coming. Why didn't you say anything about her being unhappy? Would you have listened? You were so convinced everything was fine. And maybe it was, from your perspective. You provided everything she could possibly want materially. But Marcus, you were never really there physically present. Sure, emotionally, you were always at the office, even when you were home. The accusation stung because it was true. So this is my fault. No, what she did was her choice and her responsibility. But if we're being honest, the marriage was dying long before she stole that money. You were just too busy to notice. Harsh? True. And you need to hear it so you don't make the same mistakes next time. There won't be a next time. I'm done with relationships. Catherine laughed. Sure you are. You're going to live alone in this sterile apartment, married to your company until you die, sad and alone, surrounded by quarterly reports. That does sound pretty bleak when you put it that way. It's bleak because you're not done with relationships, Marcus. You're just scared, which is understandable, but you can't let one terrible experience with one deeply flawed person make you give up on connection entirely. What if I can't trust again? What if I'm just broken now? Then you work on it in therapy through time by taking small risks with small connections and building up from there. She set down her wine glass and looked at me directly. But you have to want to heal. You have to choose it. Right now, you're choosing to stay stuck in your anger and hurt because it feels safer than vulnerability. Dr. Foster said something similar. Dr. Foster sounds smart. Listen to her. We talked until nearly midnight, and when Catherine finally left, the apartment felt less oppressive, less like a mausoleum of my failed marriage, and more like just a space, neutral, waiting for me to decide what to do with it. I pulled up my laptop and opened a new document. Things I want to explore. Photography, I typed. Cooking, hiking, travel. Maybe a piano again, maybe art classes. Maybe learning Italian for real instead of just ordering off menus. The list grew to 20 items, then 30. Small things and large things, practical things and wildly impractical things. A year ago, I would have dismissed it all as frivolous. Now, it felt like a lifeline. At 1:17 a.m., I sent an email to the board requesting 3-month sabbatical beginning February 1st. Catherine Wu will serve as acting CEO in my absence. We'll provide detailed transition plan by January 15th. I hit send before I could second-guess it. My phone buzzed immediately. Did you just do what I think you did? The 3 months starting February. Holy, I'm proud of you. I'm terrified. Good. That means you're growing. Now get some sleep. You have Christmas with your mother tomorrow, and she'll know if you stayed up all night spiraling. I set the phone down and walked through the apartment, seeing it differently now. This place had been home for 5 years, but it had never really been mine. Sarah had chosen the furniture, the art, the layout. Even the dishes were her selection. I just signed the checks. What would I choose if I was choosing for myself? I grabbed a notepad and started sketching ideas. Warmer colors, more books, Maybe actual photos on the walls instead of generic art. A piano in the corner where the ornamental sculpture currently sat plants something alive and growing. By 2 a.m., I had plans for a complete renovation. By 3 a.m., I'd found a contractor who specialized in fast turnarounds. By 4 a.m., I had scheduled the work to begin the day after Christmas. When I finally went to bed, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Anticipation. Not for business success or revenge or vindication, just for the simple act of building a space that reflected who I actually was, or at least who I wanted to become. Christmas morning arrived with unexpected snow, rare for New York in recent years. I stood on the balcony with coffee, watching the city transform into something cleaner, quieter, almost magical. My phone buzzed with messages. Catherine wishing me Merry Christmas. Jennifer sending a photo of her kids opening presents. Several board members responding to my sabbatical request with varying degrees of support and concern, and one from Sarah. Merry Christmas, Marcus. I hope you find peace today and every day after. I'm doing better. Thought you'd want to know. I stared at the message for a long time before responding. Merry Christmas. I'm glad you're doing better. Working on the peace thing. Short, cordial, honest. It felt like progress. At 1:45 p.m., I drove to my mother's house in Westchester. The driveway was already crowded with cars, aunts, uncles, cousins, the whole extended family circus I'd been dreading. My mother met me at the door, took one look at me, and pulled me into a hug that lasted a full minute. "You look better," she said finally. "I feel better, slightly." "Good. Now come inside and prepare to be interrogated by your Aunt Linda about why you're not remarried yet." "Mom, I've been divorced for less than a month." "I know. She knows. She doesn't care. It's Aunt Linda." The day was exactly as chaotic and overwhelming as I'd expected, but somewhere between the crown roast and the heated political argument and the kids running screaming through the house, I realized something. This was life. Messy, loud, imperfect life. And I'd been so busy optimizing and achieving and controlling that I'd forgotten how to just be in it. My cousin David, the one close to my age, the one I'd been friends with before work, consumed everything. Cornered me in the kitchen while I was helping with dishes. "Heard about Sarah? Sorry, man. Thanks. Also heard you went scorched earth on her. Very so. It wasn't my finest moment. Maybe not, but sometimes people need to learn that actions have consequences." He dried a plate and set it aside. "That said, you doing okay? Like actually okay? Working on it? Therapy, sabbatical, trying to build a life that isn't just work. Good, because honestly, you've been a workaholic robot for years. We all worried you'd wake up at 60 and realize you'd missed everything important." "Why does everyone keep calling me a robot?" "Because you act like one." He grinned. "But seriously, if you want to remember how to be human, we're doing a ski trip in January, Vermont. Just family, no pressure, no agenda. Come if you want. A ski trip with family doing something purely recreational." A year ago, I would have dismissed it as a waste of time. Now, text me the details. I'll try to make it. Try as a start. I'll take it. Driving home that evening, full of crown roast and pie and the particular exhaustion that comes from hours of family interaction, I felt something close to contentment. Not happiness that was still too far away, but contentment. The sense that maybe, possibly, I could build something worth having out of the wreckage. The apartment was dark when I arrived, but instead of feeling empty, it felt full of potential. Tomorrow, the contractors would start transforming it into something that was actually mine. In February, I'd leave for 3 months to rediscover who I was beyond my job title. And sometime after that, maybe I'd be ready to let someone in again, to trust, to be vulnerable. Or maybe I wouldn't. But at least I'd have tried. I made myself a cup of tea, my father's blend, the one I'd avoided since he died because it hurt too much, and sat by the window one last time as CEO Marcus Chen. Tomorrow I'd start becoming someone else, someone whole. February arrived with the kind of cold that made even lifelong New Yorkers question their choices. I stood in JFK's International Terminal, boarding pass to Rome in hand, feeling simultaneously liberated and terrified. 3 months, 90 days away from the company, from the board, from the carefully constructed life I'd spent 15 years building. Catherine had promised to call only for catastrophic emergencies. Dr. Foster had encouraged me to journal. My mother had cried and told me she was proud. And Sarah? Sarah had sent one final message the night before. Bon voyage. I hope you find whatever you're looking for. You deserve good things, Marcus. Even if I couldn't be one of them. I'd read it a dozen times, searching for hidden meanings or manipulation before accepting it at face value. She was in her own recovery process, and this was part of it. Letting go, moving on, wishing each other well from a safe distance. The flight was 13 hours of forced stillness. No laptop, I'd left it with Catherine. No phone service over the Atlantic. Just me, a window seat, and a stack of books I'd bought on impulse. Photography guides, Italian cookbooks, a memoir about a man who'd walked the entire coastline of Britain after his wife's death. I read that one cover to cover somewhere over Greenland, and by the time we descended into Rome, my face was wet with tears. I hadn't realized I was crying. The man in the memoir had learned to live with loss by literally walking through it, one step at a time, until the grief became something he carried, rather than something that carried him. Maybe that's what these 3 months would be. Walking through my own grief until I learned how to carry it. Rome was exactly what I needed. Overwhelming enough to prevent overthinking, beautiful enough to pierce through my numbness. I'd rented a small apartment in Trastevere instead of staying in a hotel. The landlady, Signora Moretti, was 70s-something and spoke minimal English, which meant I had to actually use my rudimentary Italian, which meant I couldn't hide behind professionalism and corporate efficiency. "You are here for work?" she asked, showing me the apartment. "No, for myself." She studied me with the kind of insight only Italian grandmothers seem to possess. "Ah, you are healing something." Is it that obvious? Always is with Americans who come alone. You work too much, forget to live, then come here hoping we teach you what you forgot. She handed me the keys. Thursday nights I teach cooking. You come, no excuses. It wasn't a request. That first week was disorienting. I'd wake at 6 a.m., by habit reach for my phone to check email. Remember, I wasn't supposed to. The silence was deafening. No meetings to attend, no fires to put out, no structure beyond what I chose to create. I wandered. That's all I did. Wandered through narrow streets and ancient ruins and museums full of art I'd never taken time to appreciate. I bought a camera. Nothing fancy, just a decent digital SLR, and started shooting everything. Light through doorways, old men playing cards at cafes, laundry hanging between buildings like flags of ordinary life. Photography had always been about control for me. Finding the perfect angle, the right exposure, composing the shot exactly right. But now I shot instinctively, messily, catching moments rather than constructing them. Most of the photos were terrible. Some were accidentally beautiful. All of them were honest. Thursday came and I showed up at Signora Moretti's apartment at 6 p.m. as commanded. 5 other people were already there, a mix of locals and expats, ranging from a 20-some art student to a retired professor. Ah, Marco. Signora Moretti had decided Marcus was too difficult and rechristened me. Tonight we make carbonara. Real carbonara, not the American cream sauce garbage. For 3 hours, we cooked. She demonstrated each step with the precision of someone who'd made this dish 10,000 times. Showed us how to render the guanciale just right, how to temper the eggs so they didn't scramble, how to make the pasta water work as sauce. Cooking is like love, she said, watching us work. You must pay attention. You must be patient. You must know when to add heat and when to pull back. Rush it, and you ruin everything. The art student Elena from Milan caught my eye and smiled. She says this every week. Different dish, same wisdom. Is she always right? Unfortunately, yes. We ate together around Signora Moretti's massive dining table, drinking wine she made from grapes in her cousin's vineyard, arguing about politics and football and whether pineapple on pizza was a crime against humanity. Unanimous verdict. Yes, it was the most normal I'd felt in months. Walking home through the lamplit streets, I called Dr. Foster. She'd asked me to check in weekly, and this felt like something worth sharing. I cooked dinner with strangers tonight, I said when she answered. That's quite a sentence from you. How was it? Uncomfortable, but good uncomfortable. Like stretching a muscle that's been locked up. Did you enjoy it? I thought about that. Yes, I think I actually did. There was no agenda, no networking, no strategic value. Just people making food and eating together. That's called human connection, Marcus. Congratulations on remembering how it works. Don't be smug. I'm your therapist. Smugness is in the contract. I could hear her smiling. But seriously, this is progress. You're engaging without armor. That's hard for you. Everything's hard for me lately. Growing usually is. How's the work withdrawal? Manageable. I only checked email twice today. We talked about this. I know. No work email. But Catherine said there was a board issue and I just wanted to make sure. Marcus, you hired brilliant people specifically so you could step away. Trust them. What if they make the wrong call? Then they make the wrong call and learn from it. The company will survive. Will your sabbatical survive if you keep one foot in the office? She had a point. After we hung up, I deleted the email app from my phone. If there was a real emergency, Catherine would call. The days developed a rhythm. Mornings, I'd walk to a cafe near the Pantheon and write in the journal Dr. Foster had suggested. Not about work or Sarah or anything specific, just stream of consciousness, whatever came up. Afternoons, I'd explore with my camera. I discovered I loved photographing hands. Old hands, kneading bread. Young hands, sketching in notebooks. Weathered hands, playing instruments in subway stations. Something about hands told stories faces couldn't. Evenings varied. Sometimes Signora Moretti's cooking class. Sometimes I'd join Elena and her friends at their regular bar. Sometimes I'd just sit in my apartment reading and listening to the sounds of the neighborhood through open windows. 3 weeks in, Elena invited me to her studio. She was a sculptor, working primarily in clay, and her workspace was a chaotic explosion of works in progress. You photograph hands, she said, gesturing to the series I'd shown her. I sculpt them. We have this in common. Her sculptures were stunning, hyper-realistic hands caught in moments of emotion, hands reaching, hands releasing, hands held in prayer or clenched in anger. Why hands? I asked. Because faces lie. We learn to control our expressions, but hands? Hands tell the truth. She picked up one of her pieces. Hands cupped together, holding nothing. This is grief. You can see it in the tenderness, the emptiness. I studied it, seeing my own hands in the sculpture. It's beautiful. It's honest. That's better than beautiful. She looked at me directly. You're running from something or toward something. I haven't decided which. Both, maybe. Most people are. She offered me a lump of clay. Want to try? It's very therapeutic, squeezing your feelings into mud. I'd never sculpted before, didn't know the first thing about it. But I took the clay and started working it,
letting my hands find shapes without planning. What emerged was formless and terrible, exactly the kind of mess I'd never allow myself to create in my regular life. "Don't think," Elena coached. "Just feel. What do your hands want to say?" What did they want to say? My hands that had typed 10,000 emails, signed divorce papers, built a company from code and ambition, pushed away the one person I'd loved because I'd loved control more. The clay became something like a heart cracked, held together by what might have been thread or veins or just desperate hope. "There," Elena said quietly. "Now you're not thinking." I went back twice more that week. Each time I'd work the clay into shapes that made no logical sense but felt urgently necessary. Elena would work on her own pieces, occasionally offering guidance, mostly just sharing space. "You're getting better at being present," she observed on my third visit. "Is that what this is? You arrived wound so tight I thought you might snap. Now you're at least breathing while you work. It's progress." On my fourth week in Rome, Catherine called at 3 a.m. Rome time. My heart stopped. This was the emergency call I'd been dreading. "Is the company on fire?" I asked instead of hello. "What?" "No, the company's fine. I'm calling about Sarah." I sat up, fully awake now. "What happened?" "She's out of the psychiatric facility. Got released yesterday. She called me Marcus. Asked me to pass along a message, which is, she's moving to Portland, starting over completely. New city, new job. She got hired at a non-profit doing arts education for underprivileged kids. She wanted you to know she's okay, that she's building a life that isn't about money or status or any of the things that destroyed her before." I didn't know what to feel about that. Relief, residual anger, something like pride that she was actually doing the work to change. Why did she call you instead of me? She said you needed space, that contacting you directly would be selfish, so she asked me to let you know she's okay and that she hopes you are too. After we hung up, I couldn't sleep. I put on clothes and walked through the pre-dawn streets processing. Sarah was rebuilding. I was rebuilding. We were doing it separately on different continents in different ways, but we were both doing it. Maybe that's what healing looked like. Not dramatic reconciliation or perfect closure, but two broken people choosing to fix themselves independently and wishing each other well from a distance. The sun rose over the Tiber while I walked along its banks, camera in hand, catching the light as it turned the water golden. An old man was feeding pigeons on a bench. A young couple kissed against the railing. Life continuing in its ancient rhythms, indifferent to my small dramas. I photographed all of it. That afternoon I got an email, not work-related, which was the only reason I saw it. My cousin David. "Dude, you're missing an epic ski season. Vermont's got powder for days. Rain check that trip for when you're back." I replied, "Definitely. Turns out I'm learning how to have a life. Who knew it would take moving to Italy? Whatever works. Proud of you, man. Dad says you seem different. Lighter. Different. Lighter." I turned the words over in my mind. Was I different? I still carried the anger, the hurt, the betrayal, but maybe I was learning to carry it differently. Not as identity, but as experience. Not as who I was, but as something that had happened to me. Week 6, Signora Moretti announced we were making fresh pasta from scratch. Pappardelle with wild boar ragu that would simmer for hours. "You cannot rush this," she said, watching us knead dough. "The sauce needs time. The flavors need to marry. Americans always rush, always want things now, fast, efficient. But the best things take time." I thought about that while kneading, how I'd rushed into marriage with Sarah, rushed past the red flags, rushed to build a perfect life without doing the slow work of building a real partnership. "Signora," I asked during a break, "how long were you married?"
53 years before my Giovanni died. How did you make it work? She laughed, full and rich. Make it work, Marco. Marriage doesn't work like business. You don't solve it with strategy. Some days were beautiful. Some days I wanted to throw him out the window. But we chose each other every day, even the hard days. Especially the hard days. What if you can't trust the other person? Her expression softened. This is your wound. Someone broke your trust. My wife, ex-wife, she stole from me, lied to me, and now you think you can never trust again. How can I? How do I know the next person won't do the same thing? She set down her rolling pin and came around the table. Marco, listen. Trust is not about certainty, is never about certainty. Trust is choosing to believe in someone, even though you could be wrong, even though they could hurt you. You want guarantee? Buy insurance. You want love? Take the risk. That's terrifying. C is terrifying. But being alone forever because you are afraid, that's more terrifying. She patted my cheek. You are a good man. You will love again. But first, you must forgive. Not her yourself. For being human enough to be fooled. For making mistake of trusting wrong person. For not being perfect robot who sees everything coming. That night I wrote in my journal for 2 hours straight. About Sarah, about the marriage, about my role in its failure. Not the theft that was on her, but the distance, the emotional unavailability, the way I'd treated our relationship like another project to manage rather than a living thing that needed care. I wrote until my hand cramped and the words ran out. Then I wrote one more sentence. I forgive myself for being human. It felt like a lie at first, then like a possibility, then like something that might, with time, become true. The next morning I sent an email to Sarah. Not long, not dramatic, just honest. Catherine told me about Portland. I'm happy for you. I'm in Rome learning to cook and take photos and be a person instead of a CEO. I think we're both going to be okay. Different, but okay. I'm working on forgiving myself for my part in what happened. I hope you are too. Be well. M. Her response came an hour later. Rome sounds perfect for you. Portland's rainy and weird, which feels right for me. I'm working on it. The forgiving myself part. It's hard, but I'm trying. Thank you for this, for seeing me as human instead of just the person who hurt you. Be well too. S. I read it once, then closed my email and didn't open it again for 3 days. Week 8. Elena invited me to a gallery opening, her first solo show. The space was packed with Rome's art scene, all of whom seemed to know each other and spoke Italian so rapid I couldn't follow. But the work, Elena's work, was transcendent. An entire exhibition of hands in every conceivable emotion and position. The centerpiece was a pair of hands reaching toward each other but not quite touching the space between them. Somehow the most important part of the sculpture. It's called The Distance Between, Elena explained when I asked the space between touching and not touching, between connection and isolation, between who we are and who we want to be. I stared at it for a long time, seeing my own life in that gap. The distance between the person I'd been and the person I was becoming, between Sarah and me, between fear and trust. It's perfect, I told her. It's honest, she corrected. That's all art needs to be. At the end of the night, as the crowd thinned, Elena found me still standing in front of her centerpiece. You're leaving soon, she said. Not a question. 2 more weeks, then back to New York. Back to your company, your life. Back to something. I don't know if it's the same life anymore.
She nodded, understanding. You came here broken. You're leaving less broken. That's good. I'm not sure I know how to live there the way I've learned to live here.
So you bring here with you the walking, the cooking, the creating, the being present. She smiled. Rome taught you, but the lessons travel. On my last day in Rome, Signora Moretti made a special dinner for the cooking class regulars. She'd prepared my favorite, the carbonara from that first week, along with a dozen other dishes we'd made together. Marco, she said, raising a glass of wine, you came to us a man made of work and sadness. You leave still a little sad, but also a man who knows how to make a proper carbonara. This is progress. Everyone laughed, but she wasn't done. You go back to your America, you return to your big job and your big life, but you remember success without joy is just expensive loneliness. You remember to cook, to walk, to make art with your camera, to choose people over productivity. She clinked her glass against mine. To being human, Marco, the hardest work of all. To being human, I echoed. And for the first time in 9 weeks, I believed it might actually be possible. 6 months after Rome, I stood in my renovated apartment watching spring arrive over Manhattan. The space was unrecognizable. Warm colors, bookshelves full of actual books, photographs I'd taken hands in Rome, light through Tuscan doorways, Signora Moretti laughing over her stove, a piano in the corner that I played badly but regularly. Plants everywhere, green and alive and requiring care. It looked like someone lived here, someone human. The company had survived my absence spectacularly. Catherine had thrived as acting CEO, implementing changes I'd been too cautious to attempt. I'd returned to a new role, founder and chief innovation officer. Same salary, half the hours, none of the operational stress. It turned out the company didn't need me to micromanage. It needed me to dream and create and trust others to execute. Revolutionary concept. My phone buzzed. Dr. Foster still coming Thursday. Wouldn't miss it. Made carbonara last night. Signora Moretti would be proud. Dr. Foster, progress looks good on you. I'd kept up the therapy, the cooking classes, the photography, joined my cousin's ski trips, started teaching coding to kids at a community center. Sarah had once volunteered at her Influence. Surprisingly positive. We'd exchanged a few emails over the months, brief check-ins. She was thriving in Portland. Genuinely happy in work that mattered. I was happy for her, genuinely. The anger had faded to something quieter. Not forgiveness, exactly, but acceptance. We'd both been broken. People who'd broken each other. We'd both chosen to rebuild separately, which was right. There was a knock at my door. Elena, visiting New York for a gallery showing, stood holding coffee and pastries. For the man who taught me Americans can learn to be present, she said, kissing both my cheeks. We sat by the window, my thinking spot, now shared willingly, and talked about art and life and the distance between who we'd been and who we were becoming. Are you happy? She asked. I considered it, honestly. I'm not lonely anymore. That's something. It's everything. Later, after she left, I pulled out my journal and wrote, Today I'm grateful for coffee with a friend, spring light, the piano, work that challenges without consuming this quiet, imperfect life I'm building, the space to become someone new. I paused, then added one more line. I'm grateful for what broke me, because I couldn't become this person without first breaking apart. Outside, the city continued its eternal rhythm. Inside, for the first time in a year, I felt like I was part of it instead of watching from behind glass. Not perfect, not healed completely, but whole enough, human enough, and finally, ready to see what came.